Chapter 860. Rich people had a simple way of thinking. The rarer something was, the better it was. At that moment, everyone in the living room had the urge to grab a bottle of nameless red wine. It didn't matter if they knew wine or not. The wine might not be famous. However, the name of its creator was simply too famous. He was recognized as the world's best brewer. Because this winemaker had brewed the most perfect wine, Daydream. $1 billion wine. Daydream hadn't been sold. But no one could recognize the value of Daydream. The tourists that Daydream brought to Sacramento and the customers to Mara's supermarket were proof of the value of this bottle of wine. It was held every year at the Sacramento Stadium, and last time it was the first one. It attracted 3 million tourists from all over the world. What did that mean? Sacramento had a population of less than 500,000, but it received 3 million tourists. According to statistics, Sacramento's tourism revenue increased by at least $3 billion a year because of this wine. In the past, Sacramento's tourism revenue was in the millions. It wasn't even $10 million. But now, 200,000 to 300,000 people from all over the world went to Sacramento every day. That was why Daydream had been deified. The city of Sacramento also bought a huge insurance policy for Daydream. Although there was only one bottle of Daydream, the brewer of Daydream had brewed a new wine. No matter how it tasted, the name alone was worth $60,000. The moment Mays opened the cork, the aroma of the wine filled the air. Everyone was immersed in the aroma and couldn't pull themselves out. Everyone's body and mind were satisfied in that instant. It was as if the aroma alone was enough to make them savor it. Mays regretted it the moment he opened the bottle. This wine shouldn't be shared. He should have brought it for a drink in his spare time. But since he had invited them, he couldn't keep it. Everyone poured a glass of wine. Rosario didn't know that much. He only knew that it tasted good. The taste of this bottle of red wine was completely different from the wine he used to drink when he was a cultured person. It had the taste of wine, but it didn't have the stimulation of alcohol. Rosario actually felt the fragrance of spring flowers blooming in a glass of wine. Everyone's eyes were filled with splendor. Rosario thought to himself, as expected of a $200,000 bottle of wine. The taste of this wine was really memorable. This was a smell that could make people fall in love. Everyone stared at Mays, hoping that he would share the rest of the wine. However, it was clear that Mayer had no such intentions. Previously, he had invited them here to show off. But now, he regretted it. After Rosario left Mays' villa, he returned to his car. He was still savoring the taste of that glass of wine. "Mr. Rosario, where are we going now?" "Send me home," Rosario said in disappointment as he glanced at Mayer's villa. Maybe he should try his luck at Marla in Sacramento. Just then, Rosario saw the bottle of wine on the passenger seat again. Rosario saw the number 085 printed on the bottom of the wine. Rosario said, "Let me have a look at this bottle." He picked up the wine and looked at it carefully. "This is a gift from your father's friend." "Yes." "Have you drunk it before?" "Yes." "I don't usually like wine, but I like this wine. It's delicious." "Can I open it?" "Ha." "Here." Ken was a little reluctant. After all, he wanted to enjoy it alone. However, Rosario was his boss, so he couldn't refuse. Rosario looked at the seal on the cork. It was exactly the same as the one on Mays's bottle. "Your father's friend is rich, right?" "Ah. Yes, he is." Was it really a nameless wine? Rosario thought to himself. $200,000, sell it to me, Rosario said. "Ha. Boss. What did you say?" $200,000, sell it to me. Ken suddenly slammed on the brakes. The car stopped and he turned to look at Rosario. Boss, are you sure you know what you're talking about? You don't know the price of this wine, right? I just remembered. It's called the Nameless Wine. I won't take advantage of you. It's originally sold at Mara's Supermarket in Sacramento for $60,000, but it's limited to 40 bottles a month. It's hard to get, so I'll pay you $200,000. Are you selling it? Of course, he would sell it. Only an idiot wouldn't sell it. Boss, you're not messing with me, are you? Ken was excited, but he was also worried. Was the boss trying to trick him? Did his boss really know about wine? I want to open it and check it first. If it's not the wine I want, I'll pay you $1,000. If it's the wine I want, $200,000. Rosario liked to show off, but perhaps because he used to drive a truck, he was more honest. He didn't plan to trick Ken. Plus, if Ken found out later, it would be troublesome. Rosario was not short of money, so he offered a price that he thought was fair. Okay. Rosario took out a bottle opener out of nowhere and opened the cork in the car. Instantly, the aroma filled the entire car. Rosario immediately put the cork back in. That's right. It really was the Nameless Wine. He didn't expect to find a treasure. It really was the Nameless Wine. Here's the check for $200,000. Ken was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Rosario to be so direct. Boss, where did this wine come from? The world's best winemaker. Ken was confused. The world's best winemaker? Wasn't Chin a doctor? How did he become a winemaker? Do you know Daydream? Yeah, it's Sacramento's specialty. This wine is made by the same person as Daydream. Boss, you're not lying to me. Why would I lie to you? You don't even know wine, Rosario said in disdain. Ken's mind was in a mess. After sending Rosario home, he called his father. Dad. I just sold the wine I took from home. You *Shoal, did you do drugs? Or do you need money? Tell me if you need money. Why did you sell the wine? I don't even have enough to drink and you're selling it. You *Shoal. Dad, do you know how much I sold it for? Chapter 861. Dad, I sold it for $200,000. Don't talk nonsense. I'm serious. I really sold it for $200,000. Bant's mouth was wide open, his face filled with shock. Dad, use your phone to search Mara's Supermarket for nameless red wine. Bant started searching for related information. As expected, a lot of information and news popped up. 5 days ago, Mara's Supermarket had put 40 bottles of wine on the shelves. They were specially approved by the Sacramento city government. They were sold out as soon as they went on sale. There was still a small amount circulating on the black market. The highest price was already close to $300,000. Ken, this nameless wine is Chen's gift to us. That's right. Bant's mind was in a mess. Mara's Supermarket sold a bottle for $60,000. The average price on the black market was above $200,000. The highest was close to $300,000. Chen Zhao had given him 5 bottles. Including the one he'd already drunk and the one Ken had taken away, there were only 2 left. Bant didn't know what to say anymore. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to give him something so expensive as a gift either. Of course, he was also conflicted. Should he sell it or drink it? If he sold someone else's gift, it would be very rude. But if he drank it, it would be too extravagant. Anyway, Bant couldn't drink it. Bant called Chen Zhao. Hey, Chen, did you make the wine in Mara's Supermarket? Yeah, you know about it. Ken just took a bottle, but his boss bought it for $200,000. Bant smiled bitterly. Now that I know about it, I really don't know what to do. Since it's a gift to you, you have the right to choose, Chen Zhao said. But I suggest you don't sell it so quickly. As long as you keep it well, the longer it stays, the better it tastes. You can sell it when you need money in the future. Okay, I understand. Bant was very grateful. But tell Ken not to leak this news. Okay, I know. I'll tell Ken. Chen, do you think we should expand the vineyard? Don't expand. We're selling high-quality wine. The more we produce, the lower the price. The profit won't be as good as now, Chen Zhao said. Look at those wineries. They're all huge, but they only brew a limited amount each year. Fei Lai was overjoyed these few days. After all, it was her first time experiencing the joy of making money. The 40 bottles of red wine were sold out on the same day they were put on the shelves. $2,400,000, and the city of Sacramento gave him a tax break. This was also the result of Winnip's negotiation. Now, Winnip's attitude towards the Sacramento government was in a strong phase. Now, Sacramento had completely transformed into a tourist city, and all of this was brought about by Daydreams. As long as Daydream was in Winnip's hands, Sacramento would be in Winnip's hands. This wasn't just for show. The value of Daydream was no longer limited to its own value. The indirect economy of Daydreams had already exceeded its own value. Just as Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were lying on the chair, Zhilin stood up unsteadily. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were both stunned. Zhilin can stand up now. But soon, little Zhilin's short legs bent and she lay on the ground again. She could only stand up for a short while, but Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were both very happy. Chen, why is the older the red wine, the better? Chen Zhao thought about it. Actually, that's a mistake. It's not that the older the better. In fact, the best storage time for most red wine is 3 to 8 months. Only a few wines need a longer fermentation period because of the grapes chosen. For example, our little Zhilin needs around 20 years to grow up, but Simba and Nana only need a few years to grow up. Some wineries use vines that have been cultivated for generations or even dozens of generations. Their vines are the winery's most precious assets. Usually, they're not allowed to leave. You can think of Zhilin's growth period from the fermentation of red wine. What else can you think of? There are too many things to compare, Chen Zhao said casually. For example, Chen Zhao's heart jumped. He suddenly thought of a problem. Old Turtle had once said that Chen Zhao's magic power was at the bottleneck of ultimate transformation. Chen Zhao had always had a vague idea about this. But now, he suddenly thought of the fermentation process of wine. Was ultimate transformation similar to the fermentation of wine? If this was true, then he should consider how to ferment magic power. The process of ultimate transformation was the fermentation of magic power. Chen, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about what to eat tonight. Fei Lai rolled her eyes. Ever since the underlings came to the house, they hadn't worried about this. Chen Zhao had been thinking about how to ultimate transformation his magic power. He would ask Old Turtle later. At night, Chen Zhao entered the river map. Every time he entered the river map, Old Turtle was playing games, and he was always playing games with his avatar. Old Turtle, isn't the ultimate transformation similar to the fermentation of wine? Huh, you actually figured it out. It's such a simple question. Why did you have to hide it before and make me figure it out myself? Chen Zhao looked at Old Turtle, indignant. Don't novels say you have to figure it out yourself? Is there no other reason? No. Then how do I ferment the magic power in my body? Extreme environment, Old Turtle said. Extreme how? It's either extreme heat or extreme cold. But in most cases, if you're in these two extreme environments, you'll either be burned to death or frozen to death. The extreme you're talking about, don't tell me you're burning or throwing it into an ice house. Look at Sun Wukong in Journey to the West. He mastered the fiery eyes in Taishang Lotsu's alchemy furnace. You're getting more and more ridiculous. That's a myth and also a novel. You can also choose an environment one level lower. For example, go to the hottest or coldest place in the world and stay there for 3 to 5 years. Then the fermentation process will be complete. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. Wait, I can create an extremely hot or extremely cold environment. Right here, in the river map. Since wine could be fermented in the river map, Old Turtle could cultivate here for thousands of years. Chen Zhao should be able to do the same, right? Most importantly, you're thinking about extreme heat. Or extreme cold. Is there a difference? Chapter 862. What's the exact difference? Chen Zhao asked. If you use extreme heat as your state, you'll be training your body with fire. You'll be invulnerable. Your body will be like iron and your heart will be like the sun, Old Turtle said. If you use extreme cold as your state, your heart will be like a blade and your mind will be like a sword. No inner demons will be born. Your energy will be like a rainbow and your power will be like frost. To be more direct, I don't understand. Extreme heat is training your body. Extreme cold is training your heart. Do you think body training is awesome? Chen Zhao said. At least you can feel the changes in your body with body training, but who knows if there will be any changes with heart training. Extreme cold training can prevent inner demons from growing, Old Turtle said. In the long run, extreme cold is more advantageous. That means extreme cold is better. You can't say that. If you don't have inner demons, you can't improve your state of mind. Fuck, is extreme heat better or extreme cold better? Either is fine. Can I train in both ice and fire? Chen Zhao asked. Taoism walks on the balance of yin and yang, but in most cases, no one can succeed. Okay, since others can't, I won't go either. Old Turtle looked at Chen Zhao speechlessly. When he heard the first half, he thought Chen Zhao would say that he wanted someone else to follow Buyong. In the end, Chen Zhao admitted defeat. Actually, it's not completely impossible. How? First is the time limit. 1,000 years ago in the human world, the river diagram was collected by a Taoist. I watched him cultivate step by step, but when he reached ultimate, he was already 100 years old. His spiritual power was the best in the world, but his body was almost withered. He couldn't handle the ice and fire dual training at all. He also couldn't achieve yin and yang balance before his death. Old Turtle looked at Chen Zhao. You're different. You're young and your body is stronger than others. You also have the river diagram. Time isn't a limit for you, so you have a better chance of surviving the yin and yang baptism. Are there risks? Chen Zhao asked. There are risks, but the benefits definitely outweigh the risks. Chen Zhao thought about it. How long? Depends on what package you want. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. What combo do you offer? I'll create an extremely hot or extremely cold environment for you, Old Turtle said. It'll take around 100 years. 100 years in the river diagram. Did that mean a month had passed in the outside world? No, if I disappear for a month, Fei Lai will go crazy. Then I'll use the heavenly fire and mystic ice to help you transform. How long will this take? Estimated 10 years. Can we stop halfway? Sure. Then use this, Chen Zhao said. How do I do it? I'll first create a barrier of heavenly fire and mysterious ice. Old Turtle's Phalai was countless times stronger than Qin Zhao's. The vicissitudes of life could only be in his thoughts. First, huge pillars of mystical ice fell from the sky. These pillars of mystical ice were of different sizes and lengths. They formed a semicircle within a radius of several thousand zhang. Following that, the ground began to burn with raging flames, connecting with the 1,000 zhang long profound ice barrier. Ice and fire formed a ring. Half of it was ice, and the other half was flames. If one looked down from above, it looked like a Taiji diagram. As soon as Qin Zhao approached the flames, he felt a wave of heat. Qin Zhao wanted to change directions. When he approached the ice, he felt a bone-piercing chill again. What do I do? If I go in, I'll be frozen into ice or barbecued. Use your spiritual power to protect your body first. Then go in from the direction of the mystic ice. After half a circle, you'll enter the other half of the heavenly fire. Run as fast as you can. Qin Zhao glanced at Old Turtle. Are you sure this will work? This is just the outermost layer of cold and heat. The closer you get to the core of the circle, the stronger the cold and heat. If you can't even handle this bit of temperature difference, you should change to a normal extremely hot and cold environment. Qin Zhao glanced at the entrance and then at Old Turtle. So I'll be done after running one circle. Ha! In the next 10 years, you have to keep running. When you completely transform your spiritual power, you'll be considered to have completed ultimate transformation. Qin Zhao activated all the spiritual power in his body and started covering his skin. When he approached the mystic ice field again, it wasn't as unbearable as before. Suddenly, Old Turtle pushed Qin Zhao from behind. Qin Zhao didn't have time to prepare at all. He fell into the mystic ice field. Just then, the entrance to the mystic ice field closed. Run if you don't want to freeze to death. When he entered, the bone-piercing chill attacked him again. Old Turtle, fuck you. Qin Zhao started running. Qin Zhao ran as fast as he could. He didn't know how fast he could run. He had to leave the mystic ice field as soon as possible. Qin Zhao only took a minute and a half to cover the distance of 3 kilometers. Just then, a wave of heat surged from the place where the mystic ice field connected. Qin Zhao didn't have time to think. He dove into the heavenly fire field. For a moment, Qin Zhao felt warm from the heavenly fire field. The coldness was gone. But the next moment, he couldn't take the scorching heat anymore. The human body reacted more to heat than cold. Qin Zhao felt like his hair was about to ignite. Qin Zhao sped up and passed through the burning heavenly fire field. Another wave of coldness attacked him. Where's the exit? Where's the exit that was supposed to connect here? Old Turtle, you old asterisk shoal, you blocked the exit. You want to slack off after just one round? Old Turtle's voice came from outside. Qin Zhao ran while yelling. He charged into the mystic ice field again and ran another round. He passed through the heavenly fire field and then the mystic ice field, the cycle repeated again and again. Qin Zhao could endure it physically, but he couldn't keep up with the consumption of spiritual power. Without the protection of spiritual power, Qin Zhao would have to face the mystic ice and heavenly fire directly. Finally, on the 8th round, Qin Zhao's spiritual power was completely used up. He hadn't finished the 8th round yet. Qin Zhao could only brace himself and sprint forward. He finally saw the exit. Qin Zhao rushed out of the exit and collapsed on the ground. His body was covered in frostbite and burns. Why do I have to torture myself? Qin Zhao wanted to cry but had no tears. It's okay. You'll get used to it slowly. Rest for a day and then continue. Old Turtle, why do I feel like you're so passionate about me? Because I'm bored. Chen Zhao suspected that Old Turtle had thought of this method just to torture him. Chen Zhao's recovery speed was quite good. He recovered the next day. Chapter 863. Chen Zhao felt that he hadn't improved in other aspects during the month in the river map. He sped up to pass through the mystic ice and skyfire realms as quickly as possible. Chen Zhao sped up again and again. The mystic ice and skyfire realms combined to form a 6-kilometer ring. Chen Zhao had originally needed around 3 minutes to finish, but now it was 2.5 minutes. At this speed, he would be going around 140 kilometers per hour. At the same time, Chen Zhao's control of his spiritual power was better. He knew how to use spiritual power to the maximum. He didn't need to use the most spiritual power at the start. In the end, he ran out of spiritual power after a few laps. Now, he could run 20 laps in one go. He didn't know how many laps he'd run in the past month. Chen Zhao, try not using spiritual power to protect your body. How many laps can you last? Do you want to freeze me into a popsicle? Or roast me? If the mystic ice and skyfire realms don't enter your body, you'll never improve. Just bear with it. Bear with it. Why don't you come with me? I don't need ultimate transformation. Why should I suffer with you? Chen Zhao stood before the mystic ice and skyfire realms again. He didn't use spiritual power to protect his body. Chen Zhao took a deep breath and dove in. Spiritual power protection and no spiritual power protection were two completely different concepts. Chen Zhao felt like the coldness was going to penetrate his body. No, his body was going to freeze. All his blood seemed to stop flowing. Chen Zhao felt his body getting slower and slower. No, he had to speed up. The moment Chen Zhao broke through the mystic ice realm, heat waves surged into his body. Chen Zhao suddenly sped up. The cold air in his body became his protection now. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. Was this the trick? First, he absorbed the cold air and then used it to defend against the heat waves of Skyfire Realm. But after running halfway, the cold air was used up. Next, the hot air surged into Chen Zhao's body even faster. This time, Chen Zhao didn't stop it. Instead, he let it flow through his body. The moment he passed through Skyfire Realm, the hot air started to defend against the coldness of the Mystic Ice Realm. Cold and heat restrained each other, while heat and cold continued to affect Chen Zhao's body. Chen Zhao sped up. He felt like he was getting used to it. The effect of the golden key was showing. Chen Zhao could feel that his body was quickly adapting to the cold and hot environment. At that moment, he could feel the changes in his body even more clearly. The golden key did not improve one's body's ability, but it allowed the body to constantly evolve. Simply put, the golden key's function was to increase his adaptability. In different environments, Chen Zhao could adapt faster. Originally, it would take thousands or even tens of thousands of years for a species to adapt to a new environment. However, the golden key had shortened the evolution process. Not only did his body change, but he also felt that his magic was changing. Adaptation was not immunity, so the damage was still there. However, Chen Zhao's recovery speed had also increased greatly. Chen Zhao also sped up. Chen Zhao estimated that he could reach 200 kilometers per hour. Chen Zhao, you can come out now. Chen Zhao ran out of the Mystic Ice territory and Skyfire territory. Old Turtle stared at Chen Zhao. He realized that Chen Zhao had changed a lot. With his eyesight, he could obviously see Chen Zhao's change. This was strange. Chen Zhao's ultimate transformation hadn't been completed yet, but he had changed so much. You can shrink the Mystic Ice territory and Skyfire territory now. This size is not very effective for you anymore. Is it better to shrink them? The closer you are to the center, the greater the temperature difference, Old Turtle said. Under Old Turtle's control, the area of Skyfire territory and Mystic Ice territory shrank greatly. When Chen Zhao went in again, he felt like he had returned to the beginning. But now, Chen Zhao was confident. Chen Zhao stayed in the river map for a long time. He didn't know how long he had been inside. However, when he came out, he realized that only 5 hours had passed outside. Chen Zhao was not used to the warmth outside now. Just then, Fei Lai realized that Chen Zhao had returned. She thought that Chen Zhao had gone out, but he didn't seem to have driven out. Chen, you seem to have changed a bit. Chen Zhao touched his face. Change? How? I don't know. I just feel weird. Am I more handsome? Fei Lai patted Chen Zhao's chest. Where did you go just now? I went to exercise. Did you go to the wild? Yes. Oh, I have a student, Evely. You remember her, right? She has a competition next month in Montreal. She invited us to watch her competition. Do you want to go? Sure. Fei Lai nodded. Oh, Steven called just now. He told you to call him when you come back. Okay. Chen Zhao picked up the phone and called Steven. Hey, Steven, did you call me just now? Chen, come here. I need to discuss something with you. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. Were Steven and Rasfa planning to carry out that plan? Fei Lai, I'll go to Steven's place later. Okay. When Chen Zhao arrived at Steven's house, Rasfa was there too. This time, neither of them drank. Chen, do you remember what we told you last time? Are you really going to do this? Yes. Even if it gets exposed, we can just say that we're filming a movie. It won't affect me at all. How do we do it exactly? Chen Zhao asked. You'll be my personal bodyguard for 2 days, Steven said. That's your persona. And then? Then you'll get addicted to filming short videos and post them on social media. Normally, you'll film me with your phone. That'll explain what happened later and why there are videos. Chen Zhao nodded. Steven and Rasfa started discussing the details with him. I don't need to show my face, right? Yes, you don't. You can film me normally. For example, when I'm working or resting. You can film it and post it online. I opened a Facebook account for you, Rasfa said. This is the password. Remember it. Chapter 864. In the past 2 days, Chen Zhao stayed beside Steven every day. He was really like Steven's bodyguard. Mr. Steven, do you have any plans for your next movie? Chen Zhao took out his phone to record. This was what he'd done the most in the past 2 days. Rather than a bodyguard, he was more like a reporter. I'm working now. Don't disturb me, if you don't want to be fired. Steven chased Chen Zhao out of the office mercilessly. Bored, Chen Zhao went to Yu Wenhui's office. Hello, Xiao Yu. Yu Wenhui didn't know what Chen Zhao and Steven were doing. The two were confused. Chen Zhao had somehow become Steven's bodyguard. She knew that Chen Zhao was very rich, so he couldn't be Steven's bodyguard. Moreover, their relationship didn't seem like that of a bodyguard. Every time he came to the studio with Steven, Chen Zhao would start harassing people. I'm not familiar with you. Okay, Ms. Yu. As Mr. Steven's assistant, do you have anything to say? Sorry, I'm Mr. Steven's assistant. A lot of his work is confidential and can't be leaked. Also, close the door for me when you go out. Thank you. Chen Zhao shrugged. I'm glad you cooperated. See you next time. In the morning, Chen Zhao harassed most of the women in the office. At noon, Chen Zhao and Steven went out for lunch. Steven, other than me, you have someone else arranged for you, right? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, my bodyguard is still following us secretly. No wonder. Hey, Steven seems to have fewer bodyguards these days. He only has one bodyguard with him. It's not a trap, right? Are you stupid? How rich is he? Why would he use himself as a trap to lure kidnappers? Yeah, and he doesn't even know we're here. Maybe he thinks he's safe, so he's starting to be careless. It's much faster than we expected. Perfect. We can speed up our plan. When do we do it? Tomorrow. When do we do it? Chen Zhao asked. Tomorrow, Steven said. What's the specifics? First, we'll pick up Rasfa. Then, we'll have an argument in the car. You'll have to secretly record our argument. Then, Rasfa got out of the car in anger, Steven said. I chased him out of the car and continued arguing with him. Just then, the robbers appeared and dragged both of us into the car. You realized that something was wrong, so you started a car chase. Steven paused and continued, at this time, we will arrange for an accident. Are you sure it's okay? Sure, as long as you don't hit me with a train. Then you got hurt, blamed yourself, and started planning to rescue me and Rasfa. But we can't film all of this. If we film all of this, it will seem too deliberate. First of all, you can use the car recorder to record the kidnapping and car chase. Secondly, you can record the one-man show in the car with the phone you threw aside, Steven said. Oh right, how many people have followed your Facebook account these few days? Less than 100, Chen Zhao said. So little. With my name as a gimmick, no one will pay attention to it. Of course. Who would watch an unfamiliar video if they haven't done any promotions? Whatever, I'll do it later. Then how do we set up the rescue process? Chen Zhao asked. First, buy a dog. No. You have so many pets at home. Borrow one and put it in the video. Think of it as me temporarily adopting it. Then, I developed feelings for it. With this pet, we finally found the kidnapper's lair. Chen Zhao looked at Steven speechlessly. He was really a drama queen. Who do you think is suitable in my family? If it's a normal pet, it's too boring. How about I borrow Snow White? But we'll start tomorrow. If we get a cougar today and develop feelings for it, won't that be too sudden? How about this? I'll ask my ex-wife to participate too. Snow White is my pet before we divorced. She's going on a long trip, so I'll take care of it. Chen Zhao went home and picked up Snow White. Steven also found Halifa Olis. Steven had clearly explained the situation to his ex-wife. When Halifa Olis saw Chen Zhao bring Snow White, she was shocked. Steven had said that Snow White was a cute pet. In the end, Snow White was even bigger than her. Although Snow White was pretty, it was also scary. Are you sure it won't bite me? Don't worry. Snow White is very obedient. All right then. Halifa carefully reached out and rubbed White Snow's head. Snow White closed its eyes and moaned in pleasure. Ha! Halifa soon realized that Snow White was not fierce. It was also very docile. I feel like it should be my pet. Mr. Chen, how about selling it to me? Halifa quickly fell in love with Snow White. Halifa, save it. If Chen was willing to sell it, he would have sold it to me long ago. It wouldn't be your turn. Halifa Olis glared at Steven, and Steven began to make arrangements again. Chen, you can go back to the car and film. The process was not complicated. Chen Zhao just played the part of an unprofessional bodyguard and peeped into his employer Steven's privacy. Then, because of his mistake, Stephen was in danger. In the end, Chen Zhao realized something and saved Stephen and Rasfa from the kidnappers. Hi, Halifa, what's up? Stephen acted as if he did not know anything and started acting. Halifa, Olis and Snow White walked to Stephen's side. Stephen, I'm going overseas for a while. Help me take care of Snow White. Is this Snow White? It's so big. Stephen went up and hugged Snow White happily. Snow White, do you remember Daddy? White Snow came up and kissed Stephen. Stephen rubbed White Snow's head excitedly. Don't let Snow White go hungry. With that, Halifa turned and left. In the car, Chen Zhao also finished filming. After Stephen got in with Snow White, he said, Chen, upload this video online. Keep this mini earpiece. We can talk to each other at any time. Make sure nothing goes wrong with our plan. Chapter 865. Actually, Chen Zhao's mission was simple. His job was to act as a cameraman. At least, that was what he'd been doing before the accident. He was a bodyguard who'd neglected his duties. Then he'd explode after the accident and turn the tide. But Chen Zhao was still nervous. After all, he'd never done something like this. He was an amateur actor who could make 20 NGs in one scene. Anyone would be nervous about doing something that could pass off as genuine. But since he'd already agreed, Chen Zhao had no reason to back out. Chen, when you're ready, you can drive in and pick me up. Then go get Rasfa. Chen Zhao drove into Stephen's house. Stephen exchanged a look with Chen Zhao and got in the car with Snow White. Then he went to Rasfa's house and picked him up. As Chen Zhao drove, he took out his phone and started recording Stephen and Rasfa's argument. Chen Zhao drove to a secluded road. Why are these two old men fighting? Chen Zhao muttered to himself. Last time I saw them, they were still wearing the same pants. Just then, Rasfa yelled, I'm breaking up with you. Let me out of the car. I don't want to talk to an idiot like you anymore. Chen Zhao stopped the car. Rasfa opened the door and left. At this time, Stephen also followed, and the two began to pretend to quarrel under the car. Chen Zhao's expression was bored. He waited for the next scene to start. As expected, a business car stopped just like they'd planned. A few masked men pulled Rasfa and Stephen into the car. At the same time, they shot at Chen Zhao, who was sitting in the car. Bang! The bullet hit Chen Zhao's body and then landed on his hand. Chen Zhao froze. Fuck, if it hit someone else, they'd be dead. Are they so realistic? Seeing the robbers' car leave, Chen Zhao immediately sped up and chased after them. It wasn't the time to argue. He had to finish the act first. Meanwhile, in the business car, Pablo, that bodyguard, didn't die. He's following us again. Pablo stuck his head out of the window and looked back. He saw Chen Zhao chasing after them in the car. Pablo took out his submachine gun and aimed at Chen Zhao's car for a few seconds. However, Pablo realized that the bodyguards chasing after them didn't seem to be avoiding them at all. Stephen and Rasfa were tied up. All right, it's all an act. Let us go, Stephen said. Pa, a robber hit Stephen's head with the butt of his gun. Behave yourself. Ah. What are you doing? Stephen's head was bleeding. Stephen, what's going on? Rasfa was dumbfounded too. This was just an act. Was there a need to be so serious? What are you doing? Of course, it's kidnapping. The robber said coldly, be honest, don't play tricks on me. Pablo, who is this old man? If it's useless, just kill him. Him. He's the chairman of PLM, a rich man. I didn't expect to catch two at once, Pablo said. Let's get rid of that bodyguard first. Steven and Rasfa were both dumbfounded. Was this a real act, and the real robbers were lured here? Pablo took out a grenade and threw it behind him. Bang! The grenade exploded on the hood of Chen Zhao's car. Steven and Rasfa instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Chen Zhao was dead. They didn't expect things to turn out like this. Chen Zhao was dumbfounded too. The car was completely destroyed. Steven, Rasfa, what are you doing? The people you hired are all so heavy-handed. They almost killed me in white snow, Chen Zhao said into his earpiece. Steven and Rasfa were both wearing earpieces. Hearing Chen Zhao's voice, they both heaved a sigh of relief. However, they couldn't speak now. They were all anxious. Chen Zhao and White Snow got out of the car. Just then, another car came over. It was also a business car. A few people got out, all fully armed. Mr. Chen, where's Mr. Steven? Mr. Rasfa? Did they cancel the plan? Seeing them get out of the car, Chen Zhao was stunned. Didn't you already take action? What action? We just arrived, the leader said. Look, the timing is just right. But, just now, a group of people dragged the two of them into the car. Wasn't it you? Chen Zhao was dumbfounded. No, it's not us. We're here on time. Fuck, no wonder they were so ruthless. They're really robbers. Chen Zhao finally realized. You mean, Mr. Steven and Mr. Rasfa really met robbers? The others were all dumbfounded too. Chen Zhao's expression darkened. He climbed onto the ruined car and took out the USB drive with the car's recording device. Play the content. Chen Zhao felt a headache coming on. He'd really screwed up this time. If he'd known that they were robbers, he would have taken them down directly. They're not our people. Chen Zhao's expression grew even more serious. White Snow, remember the smell of those two old guys, right? White Snow nodded. Find them, Chen Zhao said. Steven and Rasfa were dragged to an abandoned building in the wilderness. You can have as much money as you want, as long as you don't hurt us, Steven shouted. Shut up and go in. The two were brought to the top floor. The building was leaky and filled with trash. The two were locked in a dirty room. We're dead this time. I didn't expect to meet real robbers. Do you think Chen Zhao can find us? I don't know. I just hope that he can react quickly. I'm afraid that he'll be kept in the dark and think that this is our plan. Just then, the door opened. A robber walked in and dragged Rasfa out. Come out. What are you doing? Rasfa struggled, but he was quickly punched to the ground. Just then, one of the robbers took out a camera and started filming Rasfa. Read this script. The robber threw a script in front of Rasfa. Hurry up. Don't waste time. Helpless, Rasfa could only read from the script. I'm Rasfa, the chairman of PLM Film Company. I've been kidnapped. I need my family to fork out $100 million to pay for my ransom. I hope to see the money before midnight tonight. Okay, Steven, that old thing, come out. Chapter 866. Breaking news. Our station has received a video sent by an anonymous person. At that moment, the scene changed. An old man was beaten to the ground and he said something. Then, a second old man appeared on the screen. No way. Mr. Steven was kidnapped. Oh my God, how did this happen? In less than half an hour, the news had swept across America and even the world. Everyone knew the news. Steven's influence was too great. No one was unfamiliar with him. Anyone who knew Hollywood would know Steven. Steven was the benchmark of Hollywood movies. So, when the news of his kidnapping spread, it spread as fast as possible. "Chen, did you see the news? My dad was kidnapped." Zola called Chen Zhao immediately. "Didn't they say it was an act?" "It's an act." Chen Zhao's expression was extremely dark. He felt that he had to take responsibility for this accident. "Are you sure?" "It's fake. Don't worry. But I can't get through to my dad. It's for the plot." "Are you sure? Is it fake? Why does it look so real? There's blood on my dad's head." "It's all props," Chen Zhao said, forcing himself to say. "Scared me. I thought my dad was really kidnapped." As soon as Zola hung up, Halifa Olas called. "Mr. Chen, I just saw the news. Is this part of your plan?" "Yes, it's all arranged." "You're not lying. It's not like you don't know our plan." "Okay." Finally, it was over. Chen Zhao heaved a long sigh of relief. He was very calm now. He had no other thoughts other than killing the kidnappers. Fortunately, white snow had a very sharp sense of smell. When the sky turned dark, Chen Zhao finally found an abandoned building far away in the countryside. This building had probably been abandoned for 20 to 30 years. It was more than 10 stories tall and had an old-fashioned design. Chen Zhao climbed up the outer wall of the building under the cover of the night. Right now, Rasfa and Steven were still in the kidnappers' hands. Chen Zhao didn't want to alert them. If the kidnappers directly took the two of them as hostages, then it would be very troublesome. So, he had to save them first. Killing the kidnappers was secondary. Pa, what's that sound?" At this moment, more than 10 kidnappers were gathered on the top floor. They could vaguely hear voices coming from outside. "It's probably the wind." "It doesn't sound like the wind." One of the kidnappers poked his head out. At this time, the sky was too dark to see anything outside. A building with more than 10 floors was neither big nor small. By now, Chen Zhao had already infiltrated the building. Although the entire building was in darkness, Chen Zhao's vision was like that of a beast. Therefore, it was more beneficial for Chen Zhao. Suddenly, Chen Zhao tripped over something. Then, the walls on both sides suddenly exploded. The flames engulfed Chen Zhao instantly. Someone triggered the trap. There's an intrusion. All the kidnappers became nervous in an instant. "You two go take a look." The two kidnappers ran to the place of the explosion to check, but there was nothing there. There was a hole in the wall. "There's nothing here." "Then who triggered the trap?" "It's probably a rat," one of the kidnappers said. "If it's a human, there'll definitely be blood here." The two kidnappers returned to the room where their friends were gathered. "It's a rat who triggered the trap." "Rat? We don't see anyone." "No, it can't be a rat. A rat can't trigger the detonator. It can only be a human or a large animal. There aren't any large animals nearby," Pablo said with a serious expression. "Everyone, stay alert. Pull those two old guys out." Rasfa and Steven, who had been exhausted, had just fallen asleep when they were suddenly pulled out by the kidnappers. The kidnappers pointed guns at their heads. "What are you doing?" "We'll pay you." "Don't do anything stupid." "Shut up," Pablo yelled. "Who's there? Come out, or I'll kill you." "Don't do anything stupid." "I'm coming out." Chen Zhao walked out. "Shoot." Clatter, 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 ah. Chen Zhao screamed and fell to the ground. When Rasfa and Steven saw Chen Zhao, they still had some hope. But they didn't expect the kidnappers to be so decisive and shoot directly. Both of them were filled with sorrow. Chen Zhao was their friend. If they hadn't come up with this crazy plan, Chen Zhao wouldn't have been implicated and died in front of them. Chen Zhao wouldn't have been implicated and died in front of them. Lock them back in the room. Also, everyone, check around and see if there's anyone else. Only 2 people were left outside the room where Steven and Rasfa were locked up. The others scattered to the other corners of the building. The one on the ground was only Chen Zhao's clone. Chen Zhao's real body was climbing up the ventilation duct. While Steven and Rasfa were mourning in the dark room, a figure suddenly descended from the sky. Steven and Rasfa were about to scream, but Chen Zhao covered their mouths. "Shoo!" Chen Zhao gestured for them to keep quiet. The 2 of them nodded in understanding. "Chen, how come you're not dead?" "Just now. Do you know there's something called bulletproof vests in this world?" How do we escape now?" Steven asked in a low voice. "Don't you think it's a good chance?" "What chance?" "A chance to show off," Chen Zhao said. "First, I'll kill them all. Then you guys call the actors you arranged beforehand and we'll have a big fight here. They all have weapons. How do we kill them all? Are you going to do it or not?" Chen Zhao said. "If not, I'll just kill them and send you home. But are you confident?" Just then, intense gunshots came from outside. "You're not the only one?" Steven asked in surprise. "There's another helper," Chen Zhao said. It was actually Chen Zhao's other clone. It was currently killing the kidnappers. "I'll kill the 2 at the door first." Chen Zhao opened the door casually. Seeing the door open, the 2 kidnappers immediately charged in. Chen Zhao crushed the necks of the 2 kidnappers. They collapsed before Steven and Rasfa. Both of them jumped in fright. Chapter 867. Steven and Rasfa picked up the guns of the 2 kidnappers. Then, Chen Zhao dragged the corpse of one of the kidnappers and smashed it onto the camera. "Is it open?" "No." "Then, let's do it again." After Chen Zhao's antics, Steven and Rasfa forgot about their nervousness. "After you throw the corpse on the ground, press it down with your hand. As long as the camera is connected, no one will be able to tell," Steven said. He was the most professional when it came to camera language. "Don't leave fingerprints," Rasfa reminded. "Okay, 3, 2, 1. Start." Chen Zhao threw the corpse on the ground and used a tree branch to switch on the camera. The camera had already been positioned in the right direction and lens. Chen Zhao stood behind the camera and made an okay gesture to Steven and Rasfa. "Rasfa, I didn't expect you to still remember what you learned in the army." "Fuck, they're using nylon rope to tie me up. They're looking down on me." Rasfa rubbed his arm. "After 3 hours, I finally broke the rope." "Did you lose your shooting skills?" Steven asked. "My stamina can't keep up, but I'm still good at shooting." After Steven and Rasfa finished their lines, Chen Zhao used the gun to change the angle of the camera. Then there was a series of gunshots. Rasfa said, "I killed 3. I killed 1. Someone else is coming. Oh no, I'm out of bullets. I was too excited just now. I'm out of bullets too. You're really only suitable to be a director. You're wasting bullets." Chen Zhao was now pretending to be a kidnapper. There was no image, only sound. If the audience saw this, they would use their imaginations to their heart's content. They could use their imaginations from their conversation and the sounds of fighting. Crack, first, there was the sound of wood breaking. Then there was the fight between the 2 old men and the kidnappers. Finally, there was a dull thud. Damn. Grenade, get down. Boom, Steven, thank you for saving me. I take back what I said earlier. No, I should be the one apologizing. If I didn't lose my temper in the car today, this wouldn't have happened. The plot was that the two friends had a conflict and a disaster. In the end, they reconciled and fought against the kidnappers together. Chen Zhao dragged a kidnapper over. Then, Rasfa and Steven started acting again. After this scene, Chen Zhao killed the kidnapper with one punch. The kidnapper screamed, "Aw! Snow White, my Snow White is here. Why is your pet here? Mr. Steven, sorry I'm late. Bastard, you're finally here. If you didn't come, I would have fired you. Did you bring Snow White here?" "No, White Snow brought me here. It found you." "What about the other kidnappers?" "I killed him." "Mr. Steven, did I keep my job?" Finally, the three of them took out the USB flash drive from the camera. The scene finally came to an end. Of course, the good guys won and the bad guys lost. Although the scene looked cliché, the United States advocated individual heroism. For them, there was nothing more interesting than this. And this time, because the fake had become real, the impact of this show was even greater than expected. However, the police were still needed to deal with the aftermath. The next day, the police reported that Steven and Rasfa had been successfully rescued. No one knew what the inside story was. All the media reporters were trying to find out more about the case. But the police had already been warned by Steven and Rasfa. This was a country that cared a lot about privacy. So, without their permission, the police would not release what had happened. Steven and Rasfa were not in a hurry to release the video. This was because the news was still very popular. If they released it now, it would just be a flourish. They wanted to create a sensational effect. "Kate, we found a Facebook account called The Great Director's Bodyguard. The owner of this account is probably Mr. Steven's bodyguard and driver. Take a look." Kate searched the account on Facebook and found that there were a lot of videos there. They were all taken by someone who did not show his face. Most of the videos were taken by Steven. Most of the time, these videos were taken secretly. Suddenly, the last video of the account caught Kate's attention. This was because a puma named Snow White had appeared in the video. Kate was no stranger to this puma. This seems to be the Chin family's puma, Snow White. How did it become Steven and his ex-wife's pet? There must be something going on. A smile appeared on Kate's face. She walked to a place without anyone and took out her phone to call Chen Zhao. "Hey, Chen." "Hi, Kate. How are you? How come you're free to call me today? How's Snow White?" "It's great, but all the kids in my family miss you. If you only say hello to it, the other kids will be very sad." "I saw a video on Facebook with a puma called Snow White in it," Gunyanji said. I want first-hand inside information." Chen Zhao knew that he could not avoid it, but the news had to be released sooner or later. Rather than letting other reporters take advantage of it, he might as well take advantage of his own people. "When are you and David free?" Chen Zhao asked. "Fei Lai misses you a lot." "Tonight then. When David gets off work, we'll go to your house together. Then Fei Lai and I will prepare dinner and wait for you." "David, when do you get off work?" Kate packed her things and was about to go home. "I might be a bit busy today. Chen called me just now and said that he wants to invite us to his house. I agreed for you." "Oh, right. He might know something about the kidnapping of director Steven that's been on the news for the past 2 days." "Ha. Then I'll pack up and we'll go to Mountain Town together." At 6 in the evening, Kate and David went to Mountain Town together. When they reached their house, the two were already there to welcome Kate and David. "Failai, have you gained weight recently?" Kate looked at Failai in confusion. "I'm pregnant." Failai's face was filled with happiness. "Ha! You're pregnant. You have a kid." "Yes." "Oh my God, when did this happen? Why didn't you tell me?" Kate's eyes were filled with envy. She looked back at David. Chapter 868. You can come to me if you have any problems, but I can't do anything about infertility. When Kite saw little Jerlin waddling out, he immediately went forward and hugged her in surprise. "Little Jerlin can actually walk. How old is she?" "That's because she's my and Failai's child. Of course, our child is just as outstanding." Little Jerlin had never been afraid of strangers. She would greet everyone with a smile. Moreover, with her cuteness, she could definitely charm anyone. Jerlin had always been Qin Zhao's pride. Every time he heard someone praise little Jerlin as cute, Qin Zhao would feel proud from the bottom of his heart. After dinner, everyone sat together and chatted. "Chen, tell me, what's going on with Mr. Stevens' kidnapping?" "Actually, it was an accident that turned fake into real," Qin Zhao said. Qin Zhao told him the whole story from beginning to end. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was the first time Failai had heard Qin Zhao mention this. "Steven still has 2 videotapes," Qin Zhao said. "When it's time to expose them, you'll do it." "Chen, I realize that you always make big news. This was a complete accident." "It really was an accident. I was scared to death too. I don't know how I'll explain it to their families if something happens to them. If they do this to me again, I'll kill them first." Chen Zhao said. "Do you know Mr. Steven well?" "Pretty familiar, right? The killer whale in Sea of Wrath wasn't created with CGI. It was a mon. Ah. I've also watched Sea Sentinel, and I always thought it was made with special effects." David and Kite were no strangers to Detective New High. That was because the theme of the movie was actually derived from the incident that they had personally experienced. In fact, the male and female leads were David and Kate. Carter was already very satisfied with being able to obtain first-hand information. She didn't plan on revealing the truth. From Qin Zhao's explanation, it was actually more dramatic and more sensational to reveal the truth. With her relationship with Qin Zhao, she wouldn't cause trouble for him. The fact that Qin Zhao could tell them the truth meant that he trusted them. Except for Steven's competitors. The whole world should be cheering for Steven's rescue. But someone was smashing the TV angrily. This man was the one who hired the kidnappers, LoveLore. He used to be the male lead of Angry Sea Police. But later, because he offended Qin Zhao, he offended Steven. His reputation would be completely ruined. Later, because of the miraculous performance of Sea Patrol, it became the laughingstock of Hollywood. Moreover, Steven's influence was too great. As a result, all the film companies in Hollywood refused to let him take any role. Hatred. Ribble had hated Steven from then on. This had become his obsession. He shut himself in his house every day. He wanted to take revenge on Steven and destroy him. However, he also knew that it was impossible for him to succeed with normal methods. Steven's fame, influence, and wealth. It was destined that libel would not be a threat to him at all. So he decided to use another method. That was why there were 2 kidnappings and attacks. However, both attempts ended in failure. In fact, Steven had taken advantage of these 2 incidents. This made Steven's influence even greater. Libel was unwilling. He was extremely unwilling. The hatred and unwillingness in his heart kept growing. Revenge. Since he could not rely on others, he would tear this old guy apart with his own hands. Even if he had to go to hell with him, he would not hesitate. Chen, come here. What now? If you have any other ideas, I'll kill you first. No, I'm going to choose a few bodyguards, so help me see which ones are suitable. I think these people are quite good, but I'm really not good at this aspect, so I can only ask you for help. Don't tell me you're not even willing to help me with such a small matter. Fuck, you have money. You just need to spend some money and find 8 or 10 bodyguards by your side. I believe no one can hurt you. Of course, that's if you don't look for trouble for no reason. What do you mean by looking for trouble for no reason? I'm doing this for our new movie IP. Who do you think Rasfa and I are in danger for? You sound like this new movie has nothing to do with you. Fine, fine. I was wrong. Since you admit your mistake, come and help me choose people. When Chen Zhao arrived, he realized that he was in a studio. There were dozens of people lining up outside. Steven already had a dozen bodyguards behind him. Hey, Chen, you're here. Come and sit here. Chen Zhao sat beside Steven. Are you choosing bodyguards or actors? Bodyguards, of course, Steven said matter-of-factly. Do you think I'm joking? Then who are the bodyguards behind you? Rasfa lent them to me. Didn't you already have a group of bodyguards? I fired them. Why? None of them can fight 5 at once. Why would I need them? Chen Zhao rubbed his forehead. What did it mean to fight 5 at once? Before Gaia came into contact with the spiritual world, she could fight 5 at once in a normal fight. What level was Gaia at? She was pretty much one of the top fighters in the world of combat. There were probably only a few in America who could match her level. How much did Steven's bodyguards pay? Not more than $10,000 each. Don't think that being a bodyguard for a famous person would make a lot of money. In fact, they already had a rather high salary. But Steven actually wanted a group of bodyguards at Gaia's level. Unless he was willing to offer a salary of $100,000 or more. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to attract such experts. I've chosen a few before. They're all about the same. Chen Zhao's face was filled with despair. He felt that Steven was messing with him. Why couldn't Steven, the famous director, be more normal? Whatever. Let the candidate come up. Alright, next up. Just then, a tall woman walked up. She was about 1.8 meters tall. She wore a military uniform and had her hair tied in a ponytail. She stood before Steven. Woman, then lower your requirements, Chen Zhao said. Which one of you wants to go up? If she can beat any one of you, she'll pass. The woman's eyes were cold. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, her expression turned as cold as ice. Chapter 869. It was Chen Zhao's first time seeing such an ironclad request. He said to the bodyguards behind him, I'll satisfy you. 5 people. Wait. Steven whispered. She's such a beautiful woman. Go easy on her. You can go easy on her if you need to. Chen Zhao glanced at Steven. You're looking for a bodyguard, not a prostitute. The 5 bodyguards walked onto the stage. Without further ado, they started fighting. Chen Zhao was surprised. Apart from Gaia, this was the first time he'd seen such a good fighter. However, no matter how good she was, she couldn't really beat the 5 bodyguards down. In fact, if the 5 bodyguards hadn't been merciful, the woman would have been down already. Fighting and life and death battles were 2 different things. The woman was very skilled, but she was still lacking in strength. After all, strength depended on the size of the body. Chen Zhao didn't know who was better at fighting, Gaia or this woman. But she definitely couldn't beat Gaia in her normal form. Strength played a crucial role in combat and combat. Just like Chen Zhao and Gaia. In the beginning, Chen Zhao had been pressed against the ground by Gaia. But when Chen Zhao's strength reached a certain level, Gaia was no longer his match. Alright, that's enough. You pass. Steven stopped the fight. The woman wasn't unscathed, but she still looked calm. In fact, she didn't expect the interview to be like this. She'd thought that there would only be 2 people to fight with her. She was also confident that she could fight 1 against 2. But she didn't expect the test to be 1 against 5. In the beginning, he had held on for 10 seconds. After that, he had been getting beaten up. Let me introduce myself. Mr. Steven, I'm Famtis. I'm a retired female soldier. I've received professional military training in the Marine Corps. I'm good at fighting and shooting. $15,000 a month. Is that acceptable? Sure, Famtis answered. Okay, come sit here, Steven said. Next. Then, a slightly chubby, tall man walked in. He bowed to Steven first. Hello, Mr. Steven. I'm Tori, your fan. This is not a meet and greet with my fans, but a job application for my bodyguards. If you are not capable enough, then I will not accept your application, Steven said seriously. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Steven wasn't this serious when he was talking about Matisse. Steven, this is clearly sexism. Of course, I know this is a bodyguard application. I'm also confident that I can become Mr. Steven's bodyguard. Oh. Steven touched his chin. What are you good at? I might not be able to express myself verbally, so I hope to demonstrate my abilities with my actions, Tori said confidently. Looks like you're very confident. Alright, how do you want to show it? 10 of you, Tori said. Chen Zhao was a bit surprised. Did this man think he could beat 10 people? It doesn't look like it. Could it be that the real person doesn't reveal his true appearance? A glint flashed through Famtis' eyes as well. 10 people, Steven ordered. Okay, you can start. Tori crooked his finger. The 10 people didn't hold back. They started punching and kicking Tori. Tori squatted on the ground, covering his head without fighting back. Stop, stop, stop. Everyone stop. Steven's face darkened. Mr. Tori, didn't you say you wanted to show your abilities? Yes, I'm showing them now. What are you showing me? Getting beaten up. I'm really good at getting beaten up. Mr. Tori, are you serious? Yes, I'm very serious. Then how will you protect me? If there's danger, I can stall the criminals and buy time for Mr. Steven to leave. If they have guns, I can also stand in front of Mr. Steven. What's your original job? Chen Zhao asked curiously. I don't have a job. I used to be a punching bag on the streets. Then what's your ideal salary? Steven asked. He seemed to think that Tori was indeed not bad. Mr. Steven, how much do you think is suitable? 8,000 a month. Okay. Wait. Steven, didn't you call me over to give you a suggestion? Why didn't you ask me? I think they're not bad. I think so too, Famtis said. Famtis said, I think professional matters should be left to professionals, not irrelevant people. Chen is very strong. Steven could tell that Famtis was unhappy with Chen Zhao, so he said on purpose, you definitely can't beat him. Really? Mr. Chen, how about we compete? Do you have money? Chen Zhao asked. What does that have to do with me? I like to have some stakes. If you want to fight me, take out $100,000. Do you have that? Famtis turned his head. If he had that, would he still need to be someone else's bodyguard? The interview continued. Then it was time for Chen Zhao to take over. He didn't care about Steven's objections at all. As long as Chen Zhao thought it was okay, he would make the decision for Steven. All in all, there were 6 bodyguards who looked like they had some ability left behind. These people all had good qualifications and abilities. Not only were they good at fighting, but some were also good with guns or had experience as a bodyguard. Chen Zhao had studied their information thoroughly. He mainly chose experienced bodyguards with good marksmanship and fighting skills. He didn't need them to be invincible. A certain level of skill was enough. Okay, from now on, you'll be Steven's bodyguards. That's all. Chen Zhao stretched. Also, if your boss does something stupid in the future, you have to stop him immediately. For example, knock him out with your fists. That's right. Steven looked at Chen Zhao, speechless. Chen, do you think this is enough? How many do you think are suitable? In Chen Zhao's opinion, 8 was the most suitable number. Under normal circumstances, if someone wanted to harm Steven, they wouldn't be able to pass through 8 people. If there was more than one person, Steven could escape under the protection of 8 people. If there was more than one person, Steven could escape under the protection of 8 people. How about you hire an army? That's the most suitable. Famtis looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. She didn't understand the relationship between Chen Zhao and Steven. At first, Famtis thought that Chen Zhao was the first bodyguard she'd applied for. Chapter 870. Chen, how do you usually train? Teach them, Steven said. The 8 new bodyguards behind Steven all had an unconvinced expression on their faces. Even though 6 of them had been chosen by Chen Zhao. However, 8 bodyguards were enough to beat Chen Zhao up just because he was single. Only Famtis was the same height as Chen Zhao, but because she was a woman, she was already very tall at 1.8 meters. She would also look very tall. These people more or less knew some combat techniques, and in combat, the size of one's body was very decisive. Unless it was someone like Famtis who had a certain level of technique, the winner would still be decided by body size. So, even Tori, who was good at taking a beating, felt that these 8 people could beat Chen Zhao. I haven't been working out lately. In fact, Chen Zhao would enter the river map after returning home. His physical release in the river map was much greater than normal workouts. Everyone snorted and looked down on Chen Zhao. Some people thought that Chen Zhao had gotten to Chen Zhao's side with some title. Maybe he was a kung fu master or something. They also thought that they could beat Chen Zhao and get Steven's favor. But Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered with their thoughts. You drive every day and have them run behind the car, Chen Zhao answered seriously. That can improve their abilities. I'm asking you seriously. Why do you think I'm not serious? I'm going back. I wasted another 3 hours here. Then Chen Zhao swaggered off. After returning home, Chen Zhao went straight into the river map. Old Turtle, let's start. Old Turtle shrunk the Mystic Ice domain and Skyfire domain by another third. Now, the Mystic Ice domain and Skyfire domain were only 1 kilometer apart, so the length of the ring was 14 kilometers. It was almost half of what it was at the beginning. But the temperature difference had also doubled. Chen Zhao's current speed was almost 250 kilometers per hour. He didn't even need a minute to finish 14 kilometers. What was the concept of Chen Zhao's current speed? According to the current track and field world record, Usain Bolt was almost 9.5 seconds. The fastest, Usain Bolt, was close to 9.5 seconds. 1 second was about 10.05 meters. Chen Zhao could run almost 70 meters in a second. Of course, Chen Zhao's initial speed couldn't reach this speed. He needed acceleration. Chen Zhao could clearly feel the changes in his body. His own spiritual power began to become viscous. What could be done with 10 points of spiritual power in the past could now be done with 1 point of spiritual power. Right now, he could clearly feel the increase in his power. This was the most obvious increase in strength. If he met Abaddon again, he would be able to defeat him even without Blackie's help. In the past, Chen Zhao's increase in strength required a strength test to clearly know whether he had improved or not. But now, he could feel the changes in his limbs. Chen Zhao, you've completed ultimate transformation, but that doesn't mean your training is over. You can continue to challenge Skyfire and Mystic Ice. At the same time, you need to strengthen another aspect of training. What aspect? Precise. Precise. How? Old Turtle suddenly took out a soccer ball and kicked it at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao caught the ball. What are you doing? Let's play football. Are you sure you're not finding an excuse to make me play with you? Am I that shallow? Yes. Cut the crap. Use your clones. Chen Zhao also used his clones. There were 12 clones at a time. Not bad. You can release 12 clones at once now. The extra one can be the referee. Fine. Since Old Turtle wanted to play, Chen Zhao would play. Chen Zhao and Old Turtle were both playing violent soccer. The soccer ball was always on the verge of breaking. Use spiritual power to stick to the soccer ball. That's how to practice precision. My clones can't use spiritual power. Chen Zhao wasn't like Old Turtle. His clones only inherited Chen Zhao's physical strength. They didn't inherit any spiritual power. To be honest, in terms of pure strength. If Old Turtle didn't suppress his strength, even his clones could beat Chen Zhao up. Their soccer match had no time limit. They played for more than 10 days. They didn't stop at all, except that they had to eat in between. Let's play basketball next time. You're really just playing. Chen Zhao left the river map. The moment he came out, spiritual power surged toward him. It attached itself to Chen Zhao's body. Strange. The spiritual power in the river map was denser than outside. Based on the principle of high pressure flowing to low pressure, why didn't the spiritual power in the river map give him this feeling? Instead, in a normal world, the spiritual power from the outside would gather toward him. Chen Zhao didn't understand. The spiritual power made him feel like he was floating. His body was as light as a swallow. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. He felt like his body was like a magnet, attracting the spiritual power around him. Spiritual power was lighter than air, Chen Zhao thought. This meant that if the spiritual power attached to his body reached a certain level, the density of his body and spiritual power would be lower than that of air. Does that mean that it's really possible to fly in the air? But Chen Zhao estimated that he couldn't fly with his current abilities. If he wanted to float in the air, he would have to increase his magic power by at least 5 times. But this also proved that there were immortals in the legends who could fly in the air. At least in theory, it was possible to fly in the air. Chen Zhao walked out of the living room and looked at the vast mirror lake. Fei Lai was holding little Jerlin and lying on the chair, sunbathing. Chen Zhao suddenly sped up and charged toward the lake. Because of his speed, Chen Zhao didn't sink into the water. Fei Lai felt a gust of wind. Turning around, she realized that Chen Zhao was actually running on the lake. Fei Lai's eyes were filled with shock and some admiration. Chen, go. Distracted, Chen Zhao's body sank. He slowed down and fell into the water. Returning to the shore, Fei Lai's eyes sparkled. Chen, is this magic? I've never seen you use it before. No, it's just speed. Scientists had once calculated that an adult had to run on the water at least 110 kilometers per hour. Chen Zhao had reached that speed, but there were techniques to running on the water. First, he couldn't use too much force. Otherwise, he'd break the membrane and fall into the water. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. It was Ethan. Chapter 871. Chen Zhao arrived at a luxurious hotel. There was a big client here who asked for $300,000. Chen Zhao rarely received such a generous client. So, Chen Zhao really wanted to know who was willing to pay so much money. After reaching the designated floor, Chen Zhao was stopped as soon as he walked out of the elevator. Two people who looked like bodyguards blocked Chen Zhao's way. Sorry, sir, the entire floor is booked. I'm a doctor, Chen Zhao said. Someone inside called me over. Wait, one of the bodyguards said into his earpiece. A moment later, a short man with a big belly jogged out. You're a doctor? The short man asked Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao could tell that the English wasn't pure American English. It seemed to be from Europe. Yes, Ethan recommended me. Follow me, the short man said. At the same time, he said to Chen Zhao in broken English, I hope that everything you see here will be kept secret. Of course, the first rule in our industry is to keep secrets for our clients. I have a very good reputation in this industry. Many clients have received my treatment, and many of them are celebrities. Up until now, I haven't divulged anyone's privacy. That's good. The short man brought Chen Zhao into a luxurious suite. The suite was at least 300 square meters and had 2 floors. The bottom floor was a huge, luxurious living room. In the living room, there was a tall, muscular man. He had one leg on the table and his face was filled with displeasure. Chen Zhao saw an obvious bruise on the man's leg that was propped up on the table. It was probably a serious muscle injury. It seemed that he was Chen Zhao's client. Chen Zhao walked up. He's my client, right? Yes, you should know him, right? Dominic Hain. Chen Zhao thought about it. Ah, I know him. Everyone in Hollywood knows him. Dominic Hain looked up at Chen Zhao. I play soccer, not a Hollywood actor. Ah. Okay. Chen Zhao couldn't even recognize all the Hollywood stars, let alone soccer players. Growing up in a soccer desert, Chen Zhao almost never watched soccer. He knew 1 or 2 in China, but overseas, he only knew Beckham. He basically didn't know anything else. However, from their tone, it seemed that this person should also be a very famous football player. Of course, Chen Zhao wasn't biased against soccer players or any other athletes. Just because he didn't like them didn't mean he hated them. Chen Zhao admired the athletes who worked hard and sweated hard in every competition. What can I do for you? My leg, Dominic Hain said, pointing at his right leg. Chen Zhao sat beside Dominic Hain. He checked Dominic's right leg and it seemed to be an old injury. There were traces of the previous treatment. Chen Zhao glanced at Dominic Hain. It's because of the impact, causing the old injury to relapse. There's a serious muscle strain on the inner thigh. Chen Zhao looked up at Dominic Hain. I want to know how this happened. Dominic frowned. You don't need to know how it happened. I just need you to treat me. My eyes are not X-rays. All the diagnosis results can only be based on experience, so if I don't know the cause of the injury, I can't treat it. He got injured on the football field. Dominic came to America to participate in an exhibition match. He should be Dominic Hain's agent. Chen Zhao checked again. No external injuries. His muscles are loose. Mr. Dominic must have just recovered and hasn't done any high-intensity exercise. This shouldn't be the cause of his injury. Facing Chen Zhao's aggressive questioning, Dominic finally relented. Fine, fine. A woman sat on me and hurt me. The short man interrupted Dominic Hayne anxiously. That's not important. Besides, I don't want to hear about these rumors outside, the short man said. I've just completed my transfer. My next club is Real Madrid. If news of my old injury relapsing because of me playing with women gets out, then I'm likely to be asked to leave Real Madrid, Dominic Hayne said. As an athlete, Dominic Hayne did not have as many thoughts as the short man. He was more straightforward. His inner thigh muscle is seriously injured. The original muscle tissue must have been stitched up. It's very troublesome to reopen the wound before it's completely healed. He'll need at least a month to recover. That's impossible. Real Madrid will completely give up on Dominic in a month. They didn't spend 80 million euros just to let him sit on the bench. Any doctor would give you the same answer, Chen Zhao said. Is there no other way? I need Dominic to recover in a week. A month is too long. Chen Zhao glanced at the short man. Sorry, I can't help. Trash, useless, the short man cursed. You're wasting my time. Chen Zhao stood up and glanced at the short man. The short man only had a bad mouth, but he did not dare to actually fight. Under Chen Zhao's glare, the short man subconsciously took 2 steps back. What? You want to fight? You'd better figure out what this place is. Chen Zhao turned around and left without a word. I thought you were brave. Seeing that Chen Zhao did not fight, the short man thought that Chen Zhao did not dare to. He started talking nonsense again, as if he was certain that Chen Zhao would not dare to fight. As Chen Zhao left, he took out his phone. Hey, Kate, I have news here. A European soccer star played with women in America and hurt himself. Stop him, stop him. The short man immediately yelled. A few bodyguards immediately went up to snatch Chen Zhao's phone. Chen Zhao was already at the door. Glancing at the surveillance camera on the walkway, his lips curled up. When the bodyguards moved, Chen Zhao only pushed them away lightly. Seeing that Chen Zhao dared to fight back, the other bodyguard immediately punched him. Chen Zhao lifted a foot and kicked the bodyguard over. The other bodyguards immediately surrounded Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao did not use too much force. But even so, he still managed to defeat all the bodyguards in a few moves. The short man and Dominic Hayne were shocked. They did not expect Chen Zhao to be so good at fighting. Don't come over. I'm calling the police. Call the police. Your bodyguard attacked me first, and the surveillance cameras in the hallway recorded it. I'm going to sue you for assault and threats. I'll also expose to the media the fact that Dominic was injured because he was fooling around with women. Chapter 872. Chen Zhao snapped his fingers and crooked his finger at the short guy. I'm warning you. You. The short guy didn't dare to go forward. Chen Zhao had knocked down all 5 bodyguards. He'd be asking for death if he went forward. Chen Zhao just wanted to teach the short guy a lesson. It was his fault for being so mean. They'd parted on good terms anyway. Chen Zhao's treatment plan was up to them whether they accepted it or not. Chen Zhao wouldn't say anything. No matter which doctor it was, the treatment and recovery time given would be much longer than the time given by Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao wouldn't kill him. He was angry, but not to the extent of killing him. You can choose not to come, but I'll make it so that you two can't even leave America. Chen Zhao sneered. Hiring and ordering murder. You two will spend at least 3 years in prison. Nonsense. You're slandering us. Dominic and his manager were both anxious. So what? Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. This is America. I'm more familiar with it than you. Also, American law protects the weak. I can also add racial discrimination. Oh, California law has a very heavy punishment for racial discrimination. Chen Zhao often dealt with the police. He knew many basic laws like the back of his hand. How much do you want? Just name a price, come here. Chen Zhao crooked his finger at the short guy. Or I'll call the police. In the end, the short guy still stood before Chen Zhao. What do you want? Chen Zhao grabbed the short guy's hair and smashed it on the glass table. Clang! The short guy fell to the ground with blood all over his head. Remember to watch your mouth next time. Chen Zhao looked at the short guy. Don't provoke people randomly in a strange place. Otherwise, I might have to find someone to collect your corpse next time. Chen Zhao turned to leave. After a few steps, he paused and looked back. Oh, my pay can't be missing a single cent. Holofin, you'd better watch your mouth next time. You almost caused me big trouble. If you continue to make enemies for me, I'll replace you. Dominic didn't dare to argue with Chen Zhao. But when it came to his agent, he didn't show any mercy at all. Holofin lowered his head, his face wrapped in gauze. He lowered his head. Although he was indignant, he didn't dare clash with Dominic Hain. After all, he relied on Dominic Hain for a living. Some football agents might have a dozen or more football players in their hands. There were quite a few in Holofin, but only Dominic Hain was truly famous. If he lost Dominic Hain, his income would drop by 95%. This was the difference between a top football player and a non-famous athlete. Get me a doctor, hurry up. If you don't want to lose your job, find me a doctor immediately. I want the best doctor. Don't find me that kind of scoundrel again. Dominic, I've contacted a very outstanding doctor. I believe he has a way to help you stand up as soon as possible. Are they still illegal doctors? Dominic, you have to understand that if you go to a proper hospital now, your injury might be exposed, and your season will be ruined. When that happens, you will lose your value. Alright, but I don't want to be a hot-tempered person. Just then, Dominic's phone rang. Mr. Holofin, there's a woman outside. She says she's your doctor. Yes, yes. Invite her in. Just then, a tall, red-haired beauty walked in. Dominic's eyes lit up. Hello, beautiful lady. May I know your name and contact number? The red-haired lady glanced at Dominic casually. Rydra. Hello, Ms. Rydra. I'm Dominic Hain. You should have heard of me. Nope. Although America was a sports country, football had always been a minority in America. The soccer stars in Europe did not receive much attention in the United States. Dominic wasn't angry with Rydra's answer. Ms. Rydra, are you interested in becoming my personal doctor? I lack a capable doctor like you by my side. Holofin glanced at Dominic. He knew that Dominic's old habits were acting up again. He couldn't walk when he saw a beautiful woman, and his injury was caused by a woman. My annual income is over $3 million. Are you sure you can afford my salary? Rydra said calmly. Dominic was speechless. He couldn't say anything else. His annual income was only 14 million euros. He couldn't spend a few $1,000,000 on a doctor. Ms. Rydra, please treat Dominic. How did you get this injury? Rydra asked. Do I have to tell you? I need to know the cause of this injury and then I can treat it. It was exactly the same as what the Asian had said, which made Dominic and Holofin a little unhappy. Dominic told her the cause of the injury unwillingly. This is a relapse of an old injury, Rydra said. It's a muscle injury. You'll need 2 months to recover. 2 months. Impossible. The previous doctor said it would only take a month. Rydra sneered. A month? You must be joking with me. This kind of injury is a relapse of the old injury. Coupled with the serious damage to the soft tissues, 2 months is just a conservative estimate. The doctor who told you that it would only take 1 month to recover is either a liar or a mediocre doctor. Even if you go to the best hospital in America, the treatment time won't be shorter than the time I gave you. Damn, I told you that he's a liar. Holofin cursed angrily. I really shouldn't have let him go like this. Holofin only dared to make a ruckus now. If he was in front of Chen Zhao, he would probably give up on the spot. He didn't have the courage to cause trouble for Chen Zhao anymore. Ms. Rydra, is there no other way? If you can help me recover in a short time, I can double the commission. Dominic looked at Rydra eagerly. Rydra thought for a moment and said, there's a doctor in Los Angeles. He's the best in the industry. I became an illegal doctor because of his influence. If you can pay him enough, and if you can hire him, there should be hope that no one will die in front of him. Chapter 873. Chen Zhao, a Chinese, Rydra said. He's the best. Of course, he's also the most expensive. Chinese. Dominic and Holofin glanced at each other. Is it a man around 1.8 meters tall with a toolbox on his shoulder? Ha! Have you seen him before? Dominic, he's the one who can recover in a month. Ha! Is it him? If it's him, I believe he can do it, Rydra said. If you haven't interacted with him, you won't be able to understand how good his medical skills are. Is he really that good? I used to be a private doctor for a rich man. My client was diagnosed by me and the hospital that he wouldn't live for more than 3 days. My client was over 80 years old and his bodily functions had deteriorated. His internal organs had almost stopped functioning. I couldn't think of any possibility for him to survive. However, a year had passed and he was still alive and well. Rydra said, because he met that Chinese man. Chinese seem to be good at taking care of their bodies, Dominic said. Maybe it's something he's good at. After that, I was fired by my client. However, I found a second job, also as a private doctor and health consultant. My client was a young man with congenital heart disease. Because his surgery had failed, his brain waves and heart rate had stopped. At that time, he was already covered with a sheet, but that Chinese man only took a glance and said that my client was not dead. And then, in the end, he asked for an operating theater and completed a failed surgery all by himself. It was supposed to be a surgery with 4 skilled attending cardiologists, but he completed it all by himself and saved the patient. Rydra said, later on, I also heard that he saved a vegetable who had been in a coma for 5 years. Maybe you don't understand this, but the possibility of this kind of vegetable waking up is 0.1%. At that time, he told the patient's family that he could wake the patient up, and he did it. Holofin and Dominic fell silent. There was regret in their eyes. I was also influenced by him. I changed from a legal doctor to an illegal one, Rydra said. Rydra said, outsiders may not know him well, but he is the best in our profession. The United States is so big. I don't believe that we can't find a better doctor than him. Maybe, but I doubt it. Rydra said, I don't understand. Since you've already found him, why do you still want to find me? Although I am very confident in my medical skills, there is still a big gap between me and him. This. Holofin hesitated for a while and said, we want to hear more answers. We want to see if there is a better treatment plan. I think you already have your answer, so you don't need me anymore. Goodbye. Dominic and Holofin didn't ask him to stay. They looked at each other. Dominic's temper flared up again. He grabbed the bottle on the table and threw it at Holofin. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have offended that Chinese. Help me think of a way. I want him to treat me. Let me think. I'll think of a way. Holofin's mind was a mess too. How about we raise the price? He might be tempted. Let's try. As long as I can stand up, I don't care how much it costs. Chen, bring some dog food when you come back. We're out of dog food again. The supermarket in town is out of stock. When Chen Zhao left Dominic's hotel, Fei Lei happened to call him. Chen Zhao found a nearby supermarket. The biggest supplier of mountain town supermarkets was probably dog food. There were many dogs in Mountain Town to begin with. Plus, Chen Zhao's family was a big consumer of dog food. As a result, Mountain Town's supermarket was often out of stock. How did Chen Zhao sell dog food every time he went to the supermarket? He went straight to the pet section. Then, Princess pushed the cart and Chen Zhao swept through the shelves again and again. After sweeping through rows of dog food, he would pull the cart to the brim. Then, Black Ma and White Ma would come and buy 10 carts of dog food every time. Generally compliant dog food, in fact, tastes very good and is very nutritious. Canines weren't the only ones who liked it. Chen Zhao's other pets liked it too. After Chen Zhao entered the supermarket, he went to the pet food section under the guidance of the salesperson and started sweeping through again. Famtis had also come to buy dog food, but when he went to the pet food section, he realized that all the dog food was gone. Raising his head, he saw a person pushing 4 carts filled with dog food. Famtis frowned. Wasn't this the Chinese man she'd met 2 days ago during the interview? Mr. Chen, Famtis called out in a testing manner. Chen Zhao turned around and realized that it was Famtis. You are. Chen Zhao couldn't remember Famtis' name immediately. Famtis, Mr. Chen, don't you think it's rude to forget someone you've only met for 2 days? Fine, what's my name? Famtis' face darkened. Who the hell knows your name? See, as one of your interviewers, you didn't even know the interviewer's name. You're really too irresponsible. Mr. Chen, why did you buy so much dog food? I have a lot of pets. I need 2 bags of dog food too. Can I have 2? Famtis asked. What flavor do you like? Famtis clenched his fists. If he didn't really value his current job, he really wanted to beat the asterisk show up. Do you want this? Not this. It's too expensive. It's my treat. Chen Zhao acted as if he didn't realize his mistake and didn't care about Famtis' dark expression. He pushed the cart to the cashier. When the cashier saw the 200 kilograms of dog food, she was also dumbfounded. After leaving the cashier, Chen Zhao gave 2 bags of dog food to Famtis. No need to thank me. Chen Zhao smiled at Famtis. With a cold expression, Famtis left with the dog food. How rude. You didn't even say thank you. Famtis suddenly stopped and turned to look at Chen Zhao. If not for my job, you'd be in the hospital now. It seemed that Famtis really did need money. Otherwise, he wouldn't have swallowed his anger for his job. I think I've been a bit of a mouth lately. Chen Zhao slapped himself lightly. Famtis turned around and left coldly. As soon as he got home, his phone rang. Hello, who's this? I'm Steven. Come early tomorrow. I leave early. Chapter 874. Evan, come here. Just then, a large cat strolled out from a dark corner of the room. The cat was covered in spots and was more than 250 centimeters long. It is the largest cat on the American continent, the jaguar. Jaguars were the deadliest predators, and their diet included crocodiles. Jaguars were rarely owned by the rich in America because they were too big. Plus, cats had a habit of killing. So jaguars weren't good pets. His name was Evan, Famtis' pet. It was brought back by Famtis when he went on a mission in the Amazon forest. Back then, Evan was still a minor. Now, she was a big girl. Famtis treated Evan like his own daughter. The 3-year-old Evan was already an adult, which caused his appetite to increase. Famtis had to find a better-paying job. That way, his daughter wouldn't starve to death. He had no choice but to feed Evan with dog food. Her credit card had already been maxed out because she had been fed raw beef and lamb all this time. Of course, as long as Evan survived this month, her pressure would be relieved. A monthly salary of $15,000 was enough to support Evan's expenses. Of course, Evan was very obedient most of the time. After more than 2 years of training, Evan would at least not actively attack humans. Famtis was pouring dog food for Evan when he suddenly saw something in the corner. Famtis walked over and saw that Evan was like a child who had done something wrong, shrinking his head and not daring to look up. Seeing this, Famtis was so angry that he laughed. He didn't know if someone's pet had suffered, or if Evan was too hungry. He directly brought back someone else's pet dog. Evan, I'm sorry for starving you, but we should abide by the rules, okay? Oh whoa, Evan lowered his head and moaned. It wasn't clear if he was admitting his mistake or responding to Famtis's reprimand. Famtis was really short on money, even though his salary was high. But to survive this month, Evan would probably go out and bring back a few more dogs. If he was found, he would probably be beaten to death. He had to think of a way. Famtis thought for a moment and had an idea. The next day, Famtis brought Evan with him. Famtis was going to take Evan to Stephen. Early in the morning, when Stephen came out and saw Evan beside Famtis, he was immediately startled. Famtis, what's going on? This is a jaguar, right? Mr. Stephen, this is Evan. I think it's not enough to protect you with just the few of us. Animals have better instincts than humans, and they can distinguish between good and bad intentions. This will be more helpful for me to protect you, so I brought him here. What you said makes sense. Stephen glanced at Evan. It won't bite, right? No. Famtis was very confident. But it came out early today. It hasn't had breakfast yet. It just so happens that I have a lot of raw meat in my kitchen. Can it eat beef? Of course, no problem. Famtis' face lit up with joy. Famtis had thought that he would have to spend some more effort to convince Stephen. Unexpectedly, Stephen's tolerance was much higher than she had imagined. He actually accepted Ewan so easily. He wasn't like a normal person, whose first reaction upon seeing Ewan was to run. Stephen was scared at first, but he behaved very normally afterward. He didn't seem to be afraid of Ewan at all. Famtis took a lot of meat from the kitchen. Stephen was rich and probably wouldn't care about the beef. While she was feeding Ewan, Stephen walked over. Famtis was a bit embarrassed. You tamed it? Yes. Famtis looked at Stephen. Mr. Stephen, aren't you afraid? I've seen even the most ferocious beasts. It's not that big compared to the beasts I've seen. Famtis didn't think so. Ewan was a jaguar, the most ferocious predator on the American continent. The only animal bigger than a jaguar is a bear. But in terms of aggression, bears couldn't compare to jaguars. The other was crocodiles. Crocodiles didn't care about their own kind. When they went crazy, they would even eat their own kind. She didn't think that Stephen would casually touch a crocodile. Most parents would think that their children were the most outstanding. Famtis thought so too. She felt that Wen was the best. There were some things she couldn't say directly. Wen had killed before. More than 20 kilograms of meat were all eaten by Wen. It was rare for Wen to eat so much. Just then, the other bodyguards came to the villa one after another. Okay, pack up, Stephen said. We're going to the wilderness later. I need to go to a natural location. This time, Stephen had to choose a location. He'd already started planning a kidnapping movie. Ever since the plan was leaked, all the similar movies in Hollywood had been cancelled. No one and no studio wanted to clash with Stephen's theme and time. Everyone got into a business car. But before long, Famtis suddenly said, "There seems to be a car following us." Everyone was immediately alarmed and took out their guns. After all, they all knew that Stephen had just been kidnapped not long ago. There was no guarantee that there wouldn't be a second kidnapping. Stephen was also nervous. Stop the car by the side of the road. Why? Stephen asked. Mr. Stephen, if the car following us really has bad intentions, it's more dangerous to drive on the road, one of the bodyguards said. It's very likely that they'll crash into us and force our car to roll on the road, causing casualties in the car and causing us to lose our ability to fight. What do we do now? Stephen asked. Famtis glanced at the car that had stopped behind them and said to Tori, let's go check it out. The two got out of the car and walked directly to the car behind them. Stephen saw that Famtis had dragged the person in the car behind them out and beaten him up. After a while, the two of them returned. Mr. Stephen, it's two reporters. Stephen nodded. It was just a false alarm. As for Famtis beating the reporter up, he didn't care at all. No one would stand up for the reporter even if he killed the person who dared to follow him, let alone beat him up. Famtis was still standing outside the car, looking around. Chapter 875. Famtis, what's wrong? Get in the car. Mr. Stephen, there's trouble. We need to go back, Famtis said with a serious expression. What's wrong? What did you find? Famtis shook his head. I didn't find anything, but I sense danger. You're not joking, are you? Famtis, stop fooling around. Mr. Stephen's matter is more important. I'm not joking. Mr. Stephen. For the sake of your safety, you should think about it carefully. Famtis insisted on his own idea. I can sense danger. Stephen frowned and pondered for a moment. Are you serious? Famtis nodded solemnly. Go home, Stephen said. He didn't want to take the risk, even though the possibility was low. After experiencing danger twice, Stephen was very careful now. The other bodyguards all complained about Famtis. They felt that he was looking for trouble. When they reached Stephen's house, a figure rushed out from the side of the road without warning and blocked the front of the car. The bodyguard hurriedly slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The front of the car hit the man, who fell to the ground. Did you hit someone? Mr. Stephen, he suddenly rushed out, the bodyguard driving the car explained. Let's not talk too much. Get out and check the man's injuries. Call an ambulance. The bodyguard hurriedly got out of the car and went to the man on the ground. As soon as he squatted down, the man suddenly raised his hand and grabbed the bodyguard's neck. Then, the bodyguard's neck was broken and he was smashed into the windshield. Ah! Stephen was shocked. Famtis reacted the fastest. He pulled out his gun and fired 2 shots at the man in front. The man dodged left and right and then hit the front of the car. Bang! The entire car was pushed back more than a meter. Famtis quickly jumped into the driver's seat and slammed on the accelerator. The commercial vehicle ran over the man's body. But everyone saw from the rearview mirror that the man who had been run over by the car had actually stood up again. Everyone felt their hair stand on end. He didn't die. Was he a monster? The man stood on the road and watched the car leave. He didn't plan on chasing. What's wrong with this guy? Who is he? Stephen asked in horror. Stephen, I think we have a problem. Famudis said, you'd better find more people to protect you. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to guarantee your safety with just the few of us. What is that thing? The Terminator. I quit. I'm not doing it either. I didn't say that I was going to fight such a monster. The 3 bodyguards threw in the towel and ran away. Famtis, Tori, and the other 2 bodyguards were left. What do we do now? What should I do? Stephen asked helplessly. Mr. Stephen, I can introduce you to some of my friends, one of the bodyguards, Orion, said. What partner? Some idle mercenaries, Orion said. They're all very capable, but their fees are quite expensive. All right. Get them all here. At this moment, Stephen had already lost his sense of propriety and hurriedly said. With only 4 bodyguards by his side, he really did not feel safe. Famtis didn't say anything. She didn't have much hope for Orion's so-called friend. She had seen very clearly how strong the man was just now. Even with her marksmanship, she could not hit him at such a close distance. There was also a car crash, which caused the car to move backwards. And after being run over, he was not injured at all. He did not look like a normal person at all. When they reached home, Stephen was just about to call the police. Famudis stopped him. Mr. Stephen, it's not a good time to call the police. Why? If you call the police now, they'll definitely leave some people to protect you, Famudis said. But that way, Orion's friends won't be able to come. Even if they come, they won't be able to use some illegal weapons. Orion nodded. My friends are mercenaries. They have many military-grade weapons. It's not good to expose them to the police. Not long after, Orion's friend arrived. After negotiating with his mercenary friends for a while, Orion came to Stephen. Mr. Stephen, my friends are asking for $1 million. How long can they protect me? Stephen asked. They'll help you get rid of that person, Orion said. Orion said, as long as that person comes within 3 days, they will use powerful firepower to kill that person. Good, that's good. Only then did Stephen feel a little more relieved. At noon, Stephen could not eat anything. He felt uneasy. He looked at Famudis, who was not far away. Famudis, you won't run away, right? No, it's my job. That's good. After this matter is over, I'll give you a raise. Famudis's eyes brightened. Can you give me some money in advance? Yes, of course, Stephen said. Oh, I almost forgot. Maybe Chen can help me with this. Mr. Stephen, Mr. Chen can't help. The person who wants to kill you isn't even afraid of being run over by a car. Are you sure Mr. Chen can help? Chen is very powerful. We're not dealing with an ordinary person now. Then. Okay. After hesitating for a while, Stephen still decided not to give Chen Zhao more trouble. The men that Orion had found had already set up a fortification outside. For the whole day, Stephen was anxious and could not calm down. Famudis, I won't die, right? I won't, Famudis replied calmly. The sky began to darken. Famudis kept Evan by Stephen's side. Famtis saw that Stephen had a gun in his hand the entire time. "Mr. Stephen, give me the gun." "Why?" "I have to keep it with me. Do you know how many people accidentally fire and hurt themselves every year because they're nervous? Last year, there were more than 100,000 cases in America. I know how to use a gun." "It's not about knowing," Famtis said. Famtis said, "Leave the defense to us. We won't let anyone hurt you. By the way, Mr. Stephen, do you know who the person who attacked you was?" Chapter 876. From the window, they could see 3 mercenaries smoking on the grass below. Perhaps they were already used to this atmosphere, so they didn't feel nervous at all. For them, this place was much easier than the missions they'd taken in the past. Under normal circumstances, they might be ambushing in a desert somewhere. Or in some swamp, or even in some fun pit. But here, not only did they have expensive food provided by Stephen, but they could also do whatever they wanted. And all they had to face was one enemy. Although they'd heard Orion talk about it before. The enemy seemed to be very powerful. But they had guns. They couldn't think of a reason to be afraid. "I'm going to pee," a mercenary said as he stood up. "Fuck, Kamiso, this is the director's house. Don't pee everywhere. Go to the bathroom inside. Too troublesome. There's no one here anyway." Ignoring his companion's dissuasion, Kamiso pulled down his pants and stood in the grass to pee. Suddenly, Kamiso saw something in the grass. Kamiso poked his head out and a thought popped into his head. A person. The next moment, Kamiso was dragged into the grass. Oh no, something happened to Kamiso. The other 2 mercenaries rushed to the grass and saw that blood was starting to seep out of the grass. The 2 mercenaries immediately raised their guns and looked at the grass warily. "You go pull the grass away." One of the mercenaries used the tip of his gun to pull the grass away. They saw a headless body. "Fuck, it's Kamiso. Captain, something happened here. Kamiso is dead." "What? Where's the enemy? I don't see him." "Everyone, stay alert. The enemy has invaded the villa." Leibel stood in the darkness a dozen meters in front of the 2 mercenaries. But the 2 mercenaries couldn't see him. Leibel seemed to have completely merged with the darkness. A cruel smile appeared on his face, and he held a head in his hand. It was Kamiso's head. Leibel moved again and started a new round of hunting. The 2 mercenaries standing outside the grass seemed to hear the sound. "Did you hear that? I think there's a sound. Maybe it's the wind." The 2 mercenaries weren't sure, but Kamiso's death made them even more careful. Suddenly, a voice came from the left. "Da-da-da." The 2 tensed mercenaries immediately pulled the trigger. After firing dozens of bullets, the 2 of them finally stopped. "Alistair, Ollie, what happened? Did you encounter any enemies?" "No, it could be." Esther was about to answer when he suddenly saw a black shadow standing behind Ollie. "Ollie, behind you," but at that moment, Ollie's head suddenly fell to the ground. The figure had already reached out and strangled Esther. Da-da-da, what to do? What to do? That guy is here. That unkillable monster is here. Stephen's scalp was about to explode as he listened to the gunshots coming from outside. At this moment, 4 or 5 mercenaries ran in. "What are you doing here? Has the enemy been eliminated?" Famtis asked. "No, that guy is elusive. We've already lost 7 people. There's nothing we can do in the dark," the leader said. "We'll stay in the house and wait for him to walk into the trap." Famtis's expression changed slightly. He retreated to Stephen's side and whispered, "Mr. Stephen, follow me closely. We'll retreat at any time. Why? We still have so many people. Why run? Stephen asked, confused. Just then, the lights in the entire house suddenly went dark. That was what Famtis was worried about. The situation instantly turned chaotic. Stephen immediately became agitated. That person is here. In the darkness, a person stood in the hallway. The moonlight shining in from the window could clearly see that the person was standing there. But the moonlight seemed unwilling to touch him. It was as if he was shrouded in a layer of darkness. Who the hell are you? Stephen yelled. Mr. Stephen, you forgot. You actually forgot me. Stephen felt that the voice was familiar, but he couldn't remember where he'd heard it before. Who exactly are you? Don't worry. I'll let you know who I am soon. Libel's voice was filled with excitement. You'll know soon enough. Open fire. The leader of the mercenary group shouted, and everyone's guns immediately burst into flames. Libel's figure moved and disappeared into the darkness again. Stop. The mercenary group's leader gave the order, and the gunshots suddenly stopped. The atmosphere became tense. Every mercenary stared at the hallway nervously. Clang, the windows suddenly shattered. Libel charged in through the window and pounced on a mercenary. Bang, bang, Famtis fired, but Libel dodged and avoided Famtis' shot. Just as Libel was about to pounce on Famtis, Stephen pounced on him. In terms of body size and weight, Stephen was 3 times heavier than Libel. But when Libel raised his leg, Stephen was kicked away. Stephen. Famtis fired again. Libel jumped out of the window and disappeared into the darkness. Famtis looked at Stephen worriedly. Stephen stood up again, but he seemed to be limping. He was injured. Famtis had never seen an enemy like this before. He was completely unbeatable. Even a beast like Stephen had been injured in an instant. Damn, I don't want to play anymore. He's a monster, the leader shouted. The mercenaries were already thinking of retreating. All of them started to run out. But as soon as they stepped out of the house, they were attacked by Libel. Mr. Stephen, let's go, Famtis said in a low voice. Stephen, can you keep up? Roar, Stephen limped behind Famtis. Stephen was extremely nervous. Where are we going? Famtis glanced at the mercenaries at the entrance, who were currently fighting with Libel. Gunshots rang out one after another, continuing to ring out. I've already prepared the car, Famtis said. You knew that they couldn't stop us. My instincts have always been accurate, Famtis said. By the way, you don't mind if I blow up your house, right? What? Stephen didn't understand. Rumble, Stephen's house had already turned into ashes. Stephen was dumbfounded. Chapter 877. You just blew up $1 million. If you don't want to die, you better get in the car now. That guy didn't die? Stephen asked with wide eyes. No, I can feel it. He's not dead yet, Famtis said. Stephen hurriedly got into the car. Famtis was just about to start the car. There was a sudden bang from the back of the carriage, and Libel was already lying on the back of the carriage. He's here, he's here. Stephen, you old thing. Do you still remember? Bang! Famtis turned around and fired. Libel fell out of the trunk. The car started in an instant and sped away. Is he dead? No. Do you know who he is? No. Stephen was still dumbfounded. Who was he? Famtis glanced at the rearview mirror. He's chasing us again. Stephen looked back. He can outrun a car. I can't. Famtis looked behind him and saw that Libel was being pulled further and further away. Seeing that Stephen was about to escape, Libel looked around and directly broke the window of a car by the road. Libel's body began to emit a black gas, which seeped into the gaps of the car. Hoo-hoo, the car started and chased after Stephen's car again. "He's here again," Famtis said. "Where are we going now?" "Police station. I hope the police can protect you," Famtis said. Duong, Libel's car crashed heavily into the rear of Stephen and Famtis's car. "Faster, faster," Stephen yelled. "This car only has this kind of speed." The car belonged to Famtis. Famtis's heart ached every time it crashed into it. "Mr. Stephen, will you pay for the repair of this car?" "If we can escape, I'll give you a new car," Stephen said nervously. "Is there no way to kill that monster?" "At least not with pistols," Famtis said. Stephen took out his phone. "Hey, Chen, I'm being chased by an unkillable monster. Do you know what time it is? Did you know Failai was pregnant? Call me at this time. Duong, I'm going to die." Stephen screamed. "Come to my house." Chen Zhao yawned. "Call me 3 minutes before you arrive. That's all." "That way," Stephen called out. "That's not the way to the police station." Stephen reached out and deflected the reverse. "You're crazy. Do you know what you're doing? Those mercenaries couldn't even kill that monster with their powerful firepower. Do you think the police can protect me?" Stephen suddenly became calm. "You said it yourself. The firepower of the police can't compare to mercenaries, so if you want the police to protect me, I'll only die faster. Go to Chen's house." "You're the crazy one. You don't trust the police. You'd rather trust that Chinese man. I told you to go to Chen's house." "I refuse. I don't want to die," Famtis directly refused. "I'll give you $100,000 if you can send me to Chen's house." Famtis froze for a moment and turned to look at Stephen. "Are you serious? 100,000 USD. She had never seen so much money in her life. The $100,000 pierced through her heart. "Yes, go to Chen's house." "Where is it? How far is it?" "Mountain town. It should be 30 kilometers. I'll show you the way." Famtis' fighting spirit rose and he sped up. Nothing was more important than $100,000. As long as he had $100,000, Evan could eat whatever he wanted. He wouldn't have to starve or eat dog food anymore. However, Libel's car wasn't slow either. He caught up to the car in front and crashed heavily into the back of the car. "Faster, faster." Stephen's breathing was rapid. Turn right, then turn left again." "Damn, why does this Chinese man live in such a remote place?" Stephen looked back at the car behind. "The car behind us is emitting black smoke. Is it on fire?" Famtis looked back. "I don't think it's on fire. It's more like it's being controlled by a demon." "Have you seen this before?" "No." Stephen's hair stood on end. "The one chasing you seems to be a demon, right? Are you kidding?" Stephen's expression stiffened even more. "There's a fork in the road ahead. Where should we go?" "Turn left in the direction of Mirror Lake." Just then, Stephen took out his phone again. "Chen. I'll be there soon. Asterisk Shoal, stop sleeping. I'm dying. Got it. I'm getting up." Famudis was speechless. They were in dire straits. But from Chen Zhao's tone, he seemed to have just woken up. Could this guy really save them? Would he drag this guy down? Whatever, he couldn't care so much. How much farther? A few kilometers. It's very close. "Chen, what's wrong?" Failai asked in a daze. Go back to sleep. Steven seems to be being chased by something. I told him to run to our house. I'll go down and take care of it. Go back to sleep. Oh. Failai continued to sleep peacefully. Chen Zhao stretched. He got up and went to Jerlin's room next door. He kissed the sleeping girl. You too, close the door later. There might be some noise, Chen Zhao said to the two underlings guarding the room. Yes, master. Chen Zhao went downstairs and poured a glass of water. He walked to the door with the glass and waited for Steven. He could already hear the sound of tires rubbing against the ground in the distance. How much farther? It's up ahead. The car went around a corner. Steven could already see Chen Zhao standing at the door. Famtis also saw Chen Zhao. He was wearing pajamas and had a glass of water in his hand. The car stopped before Chen Zhao. Steven, Famtis, and Evan rushed out of the car. Chen, there's a demon chasing us. Drink some water and calm down. There are no demons in the world. Chen Zhao handed the glass to Steven. Mr. Chen, Mr. Steven isn't joking. There really are demons. Guns are useless against them. Even a car can't kill them. Seeing Chen Zhao's attitude, Famtis was already in despair. Looking at Chen Zhao's sleepy eyes, she really didn't believe that he could solve the problem. Quiet down. My girlfriend and daughter are still sleeping. Famtis was completely speechless. He turned to look at Steven. Did you see that? That's your last hope. Chen, that thing is coming. Chapter 878. The moment Leibold saw Chen Zhao, his hatred and resentment grew even crazier. The car stopped before Chen Zhao. Famtis looked at Chen Zhao. She thought that Chen Zhao's legs must have gone soft from fear. He didn't even move. At the time, she thought that the monster would just drive over. Just then, the car door opened. A person walked out. He was shrouded in a black aura. Famtis and Steven could tell that the man wasn't normal. That's great. That's really great. The two people I hate the most, the two people who caused me to be in this situation, have actually gathered together. I feel like God hasn't abandoned me, haha. That's great. Hey, lower your voice. Someone's sleeping inside. Steven and Famtis stared at Chen Zhao speechlessly. Perfect. After I kill you, I'll kill your family too. I'll send them to accompany you. Leibold suddenly pounced at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised his head and kicked. Leibold lost control and smashed into the windshield. Both Steven and Famtis were stunned. The monster was kicked away. Both of them looked at Chen Zhao, who was yawning. Leibold stood up again and pounced at Chen Zhao again. Bang! The next moment, Leibold was kicked away again. So sleepy. Chen Zhao rubbed his eyes. Leibold didn't believe it. He wasn't willing to accept it. He was already like this. Why couldn't he beat Chen Zhao? Leibold charged at Chen Zhao again and threw a punch at him. Watch out! Famtis immediately warned Chen Zhao when he saw Leibold's ferocious attack. Leibold's fist hit Chen Zhao's face. Chen Zhao tilted his head slightly. Famtis and Steven stared at Chen Zhao in shock. It ended just like that. Chen. Doesn't it hurt? Chen Zhao touched his cheek. Let me teach you how to punch. Steven and Famtis saw Chen Zhao's fist turn red the moment he punched. The moment it hit Leibold's stomach, the black aura around him exploded. As for Leibold, he lost control of his body and smashed through the parked car behind him. Steven and Famtis' eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Famtis remembered that he'd met Qin Zhao twice in the past few days. She had even thought about teaching him a lesson. Now, he suddenly felt so stupid. A mouse actually dared to provoke a tiger. Stephen had always known that Qin Zhao was very powerful. However, he did not have a clear concept of the word powerful. He didn't know how strong Qin Zhao was. But now, he finally had a clearer understanding. The monster that was hunting him was invincible. This invincible monster couldn't defeat Qin Zhao. Bang! Famtis's car finally exploded under the battered state. Libel stood up again, the black aura around him thicker. The flames on his back reflected the black aura on his body. Wow! At this moment, Jerlin's cries came from the villa. She was startled awake by the explosion. Qin Zhao rubbed his forehead and looked at Libel. "You woke my daughter up." "I'll make sure she never wakes up again," Libel said cruelly. Famtis raised an eyebrow. She could feel that Qin Zhao had changed. His gaze had changed. Qin Zhao finally started walking. Famtis realized that Qin Zhao hadn't moved at all. He'd been standing there the whole time. But now, he finally walked forward. "What did you just say?" "I'm going to," Libel didn't finish. Qin Zhao suddenly appeared above his head and punched at him with his right fist. Libel hurriedly raised his arm to block. Bang! Black blood splattered on the burning car behind him. Stephen's mouth hung open. Libel's right arm had turned into minced meat. Famtis' pupils constricted. She'd thought that Libel was already a monster. But compared to Qin Zhao, Libel was more like a sheep that had entered a tiger's den. "What did you just say?" Qin Zhao stood before Libel. Libel wanted to turn and run. But Qin Zhao had already grabbed his left arm. "Repeat what you just said." Qin Zhao pinched Libel's mouth and lifted him into the air with one hand. Famtis and Stephen heard the sound of bones cracking in Libel's jaw. Libel's jaw had been completely crushed. "Stephen, go get my kids. It's time for supper." "Oh." Stephen immediately ran into the mansion. Famtis didn't understand what Qin Zhao meant. "What kids? What supper time?" Soon, she understood. A large fiery red lizard ran out. Stephen hid behind Famtis in fear. In fact, Famtis was also very happy at this moment. Abidos was really too big. Abidos went up and bit down on one of Libel's legs that was lifted in the air. Libel tried to resist, but Qin Zhao pinched his face. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't. Famtis was still paying attention to Abidos and marveling at its size. Her body was suddenly pushed by a huge force. Famtis lost her balance and fell to the ground. Then, she saw a huge body pass in front of her. Anyone who saw the princess for the first time would be shocked by her figure. Princess also bit Libel's other leg. Crack, crack, crack. Princess's bite force was much stronger than Abidos. Abidos was still tearing, but Princess had bitten off Libel's leg. Abidos saw that Princess had torn off a leg, so he immediately went up to fight Princess for food. The two behemoths were fighting over it. Famtis felt his scalp go numb. Just then, Black Ma and White Ma came out too. Although Black Ma and White Ma were not as big as Abidos and Princess, they were still bigger than Evan. Famudis was dumbfounded by what he saw. Were all the pets raised by the Chinese so perverted? Just then, Libel's arm that Qin Zhao had crushed started growing again. As expected, it was another believer of the god of otherworldlings. Qin Zhao took out his bronze sword and nailed Libel to the ground. "Don't eat too much tonight," Qin Zhao said. "If you're full, leave some for Amon." With that, Qin Zhao ignored Libel and said to Stephen, "Let's go in." "Ha! We're not going to care about him. Why should we? Do you want to watch Escapades and the others eat supper? Stephen glanced at Libel. He would only have nightmares if he looked too much. He decided not to watch and followed Chen Zhao into the living room. Chapter 879. Just an idiot with water in his head, Chen Zhao said casually. In Chen Zhao's mind, people who believed in those alien gods were crazy. Other than having water in their heads, there was no other explanation. Chen Zhao believed that a good religion, one that could be recognized by the government, had to first guide people to do good. To maintain the stability of society, and not to encourage believers to do some crazy things. By the way, who is that guy? Why does he treat us as enemies? Libel probably didn't know that after all the trouble he'd caused, Chen Zhao and Stephen didn't even know who he was. They didn't even care about him at all. Stephen was also confused. I don't know. He felt that he was innocent and that a monster had a grudge against him for no reason. Oh, is this your pet? Chen Zhao looked at Famous Evan. It seems to be injured. Come here, I'll help you heal it. Evan looked at Chen Zhao, confused. It wasn't that he didn't understand Chen Zhao. On the contrary, it understood Chen Zhao's words. That was why he looked confused. Chen Zhao had used the skill stone, beast language. That was why he could communicate with any wild animal. Evan limped toward Chen Zhao. Famous' face was filled with surprise because Evan rarely got close to strangers. But now, Evan actually walked toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reached out and touched Evan's hind leg. It's okay. It's just a dislocation. Bear with the pain. Evan nodded. Famous was even more surprised. It was the first time he'd seen Evan act so human. In the past, Evan was very clingy, but most of the time, it was a mother-son bond. Evan rarely reacted to her words. But when facing a stranger, he was actually so human. Crack, Chen Zhao straightened Evan's leg and Evan's movements became much easier. But Evan didn't dare to be impudent here. Everyone in this house was a wretched wretch. Chen, are you a spiritualist? Stephen asked. Amateur. Don't you think it's really late? It is. Which room do I sleep in tonight? If you don't have enough room, I can squeeze in. That's good too. The princess and the others' rooms are still empty. You can go to their rooms to rest. You know that the princess and the others won't bite, except for the occasional hunger in their sleep. In Chen Zhao's house, Stephen could finally sleep peacefully. Only Chen Zhao could give him a sense of security and trust. The next morning, Stephen and Famous left in a hurry. The incident last night was not a small one. After all, so many people had died in Stephen's house. Furthermore, there were guns and cannons, and even Stephen's villa was bombed in the end. His house was probably filled with police officers last night. Chen, what happened to Stephen's family? This isn't your plan again, is it? Rasfa had just received the news. No, Chen Zhao said. He was being chased and ran to my house in the middle of the night. So interesting. Hee, interesting. Chen Zhao didn't know what Rasfa was thinking. Anyway, Stephen had almost peed his pants yesterday. If it was Rasfa, it would probably be the same. Chen, I think the attack on Stephen's house will be another hot news. That video should be released soon. I have a reporter friend. Send the video to him. Sure. Rasfa didn't care who released the news. In the end, it had to be sent to reporters. Rather than someone else, he'd rather send it to someone he knew. That day, all the media repeated the same news again. Director Stephen's house had been attacked. Of course, Stephen was safe and sound. Everyone was condemning this terrorist attack. Just then, a video suddenly appeared. It was a recording of when Stephen and Rasfa had been kidnapped last time. In the dark environment, Stephen and Rasfa each held an automatic rifle. They had just killed a kidnapper. Then, it was their conversation. They didn't act like old men at all. Instead, they were more like two lone heroes who had entered a tiger's den. Instantly, America was in an uproar. No one thought that director Stephen and the billionaire Rasfa would have such a side. Everyone tried to verify whether the video was real or fake, or if it was just a part of a movie. The second half of the video was gone because the camera had been shot off. There was only the conversation between the two, with the sound of gunshots and bombs in between. This caused everyone to imagine the scene themselves. From the conversation between the two of them, as well as the gunshots and explosions around them, they had a very clear picture of what was going on. A day after the video appeared, Stephen and Rasfa finally accepted an interview from the media. They said that the video was real. At the same time, Stephen also said that the attack on his mansion 2 days ago was from these kidnappers. This news ignited the passion of America's citizens. Of course, they were also worried about the security and the police's slow response. After all, even the director's house had been attacked. Throughout the entire process, the police had been slow to react. They didn't actively participate in the case the whole time. This made the police very passive. This incident was now known to everyone, and there was no one who did not know about it. Stephen also became a hero in America because of this. When Stephen announced that this incident would be adapted into a movie, the entire Hollywood was in an uproar. Everyone could imagine how sensational the movie would be. It was a super popular event, directed by a super director, and something that the director had experienced personally. All the film companies were asking around, wanting to know if Stephen wanted to invest in it. Usually, the film company would come up with a plan first, discuss the budget, and then find a suitable director. But for Stephen, they would directly ask if he wanted money and how much he wanted. As long as Stephen was willing to invest, they wouldn't waste any time. They would just tell him how much he wanted and give him as much as he wanted. However, this movie was no longer accepting outside investments. After all, Chen Zhao, Stephen, and Rasfa had already discussed it. The three of them would play together. Chen Zhao was an outsider. He was even an outsider. Usually, no matter how rich he was, he wouldn't invest in a Hollywood movie. For example, there were many rich people in America, but the capitalists couldn't invest in Hollywood because Hollywood was xenophobic. Chapter 880. The weather in November was starting to get cold. Of course, the temperature difference in Los Angeles wasn't that big. Little Jerlin was very strong, at least for a child less than 3 months old. She could already call Dad and Mom. She could also run, jump, and swim. The temperature had dropped a few degrees, but Chen Zhao still let her play in the water. A person's immunity was determined from a young age. Chen Zhao didn't expect Jerlin to be strong or better than athletes in the future. However, he still hoped that she could be healthy. If the conditions allowed and she was interested, Chen Zhao wouldn't object. Little Jerlin had been working hard to swim to the center of the lake. But until now, she still hadn't done it. To her, this was the ultimate goal. A car stopped in front of the house. Little Jerlin ran out in a big stride. Got out of the car and Jerlin immediately went up to her. Squeak! For's heart melted when she saw Jerlin pouncing at her. Little Jerlin was wearing a diaper. She was naked and had a small belly. Every time Jerlin opened her mouth, saliva would fly everywhere. Kids usually couldn't control their saliva. Once they opened their mouths, saliva would flow to the corners. For carried Jerlin into the living room. Phalai, why don't you let Jerlin wear more clothes? You're not mistreating her just because she's not your child, right? Phalai was speechless. I want to dress her pretty, but every time I do, she'll have her friends tear her clothes and then jump into the water to play. Phalai was helpless too. Jerlin had to soak in the water for at least 2 to 3 hours every day. She didn't do it at the same time either. She went into the water from morning to afternoon, and then to night. In between, she would sleep, rest, or play other times. Little Jerlin was wild and very active. Medically speaking, normal kids should be active. The healthier they were, the more active they were. This was because a child's cerebral cortex actively inhibited the process, which was weaker than the process of excitement. The younger they were, the more active they were. This kind of active process was very beneficial for the development of a child's brain. If their brain was active for a long time, they would be more cheerful and lively. The average temperature these 2 days has been below 22 degrees. Are you sure it's okay for Jerlin to go into the water? Chen said it's fine. He said Jerlin has already gotten used to the temperature change, so he didn't stop her. Fine. Since Chen says so, I can't object. For trusted Chen Zhao's judgment. In fact, as long as one overcomes the doting that parents have for their children, many behaviors that seem dangerous to children are not really dangerous. For example, children's climbing and jumping may seem dangerous to adults, but in fact, the possibility of children suffering from side effects from bumping into things is very low. Suppressing this kind of nature would instead bring about some uncertain consequences. For example, many people with depression have suppressed their natural instincts since they were young. When they grew up, their brains would always be in a state of self-restraint. The activity of the cerebral cortex would be too weak, and they would eventually suffer from depression. 4. Aren't you working today? I'm off today, so I came to visit you, 4 said. Isn't Chen home? He went out to work. 4 looked at Phalai's growing belly. She had once thought Phalai would never be able to get pregnant again. But she didn't expect Chen Zhao to even have a solution for this. Aren't you lonely at home? Just then, there was a clang from the kitchen. Then she saw Princess walk out covered in ketchup. She looked at Phalai pitifully. Fine, I take back what I said. With these pets by Phalai's side, she would never feel lonely. 4 started to envy Phalai. To her, these pets were actually all children. They were loyal and understanding. Occasionally, they would throw a tantrum or make a joke. These could all ease people's emotions. Data showed that pregnant women in families with pets had a 2% higher chance of giving birth to a healthy baby. Of course, pets still had to be protected from diseases and parasites. Some pregnant women with allergies were also unsuitable for pets. Phalai had no problems in this aspect. Plus, she had Chen Zhao, a doctor, by her side. 4 didn't have to worry too much. Chen Zhao would definitely consider things more comprehensively than her. Because 4 often came to Chen Zhao and Phalai's house, she was already very familiar with Chen Zhao's family members. Many times, she even wanted Chen Zhao to train a pet for her. What's Chen busy with recently? I think he's working on some movie project with a friend. I'm not sure. Phalai actually knew what Chen Zhao had been doing recently. It was the IP project that Chen Zhao, Steven, and Rasfa were working on. But the fewer people who knew about it, the better, even if 4 was trustworthy. He's planning to enter Hollywood. No. His friend asked him to invest in a movie. He has some cash, so he invested it. 4 had actually known Chen Zhao for a long time, even before Phalai. She remembered that when she first met Chen Zhao, he wasn't so rich. But a year had passed and Chen Zhao had already earned tens of millions of dollars. For felt that she couldn't catch up to his speed of earning money. Of course, For and Chen Zhao were very different. For had grown up in an environment where she didn't crave money that much. Even though Chen Zhao had earned tens of millions, he still wasn't satisfied. Chen Zhao always had a sense of crisis. He needed money to give himself a sense of security. He'd experienced the pain of not having money. Many of the things he did were to earn money. For example, he'd invested in Ford and Tiger, and he'd started all sorts of side businesses. Of course, Chen Zhao wouldn't give up. He would never give up on his main profession. It was also his ability to survive and his medical skills. At the moment, Chen Zhao was treating a woman in her 50s. Mrs. Peter, your problem isn't serious. You just need to walk more. Thank you, Mr. Chen. You're a good person. God will protect you. Ha. I'm not a believer, Chen Zhao replied, smiling. No, God will protect every good person. Mrs. Peter, I'm an illegal doctor. Are you sure I'm a good person? This has nothing to do with profession. I just feel kindness from you. Smiling, Mrs. Peter pulled Chen Zhao over. Chen Zhao had nothing to do now, so he sat in the yard and chatted with Mrs. Peter. Chen Zhao saw a book on the table. Mrs. Peter, do you study theology? I have 43 degrees in different fields, and theology is my 44th field of study. Chen Zhao was stunned. This Mrs. Peter was actually a super genius. For a person in her 50s, 10 years of maturation was deducted. This meant that she could get a degree in a different field in almost a year. Mrs. Peter, you should have a medical certificate too, right? Chapter 881. Physics, Biology, Chemistry, and Math. These should all be very scientific subjects. They should have helped you build a complete worldview. How can you still learn theology? Chen Zhao looked at Mrs. Peter curiously. There was a saying that went, the end of science is theology, and the end of theology is philosophy. Actually, that wasn't the case. Science was very rational. Science was materialism, while theology was idealism. Science was because I believed it existed and I had to prove it. Theology was because I thought it existed, so it must exist. These were two completely different ways of thinking. Therefore, it was hard for Chen Zhao to imagine a scientist studying theology. What about you? Mrs. Peter looked at Chen Zhao. Do you believe in God? Chen Zhao thought about it. God. He'd seen demons, angels, and otherworldly gods. However, Chen Zhao was still doubtful about whether God really existed. Everyone had their own understanding of God. In religious descriptions, God was omnipotent and omnipresent. Atheists and theists actually had very similar viewpoints. Because atheists and theists both felt that God existed in everyone's heart. I'm a wavering person, Chen Zhao answered. I only believe in what I see. Then you're a rational person, Mrs. Peter said, chuckling. Chen Zhao looked at her. She must have been a beauty when she was young. Even though he had aged, his body still carried a kind of graceful and luxurious temperament. Actually, Mrs. Peter wasn't very old now. I used to be a rational person too, Mrs. Peter said. A very pure one. I'm even an atheist. Then what changed you? Ha. Forget it. It's nice talking with you. Let's change the topic. Chen Zhao was stunned. Weren't they having fun? Why did they suddenly change the topic? Oh, you said that you can't study medicine because you haven't learned it. Why is that? Is it a family tradition? Actually, this question goes back to the previous topic. Mrs. Peter looked at Chen Zhao. You also like to explore secrets. People are curious, aren't they? Then what I'm about to say next, you can just treat it as a supernatural story. Don't question me, I won't accept any questions. If you say that, it means that you have been questioned many times in the past. I said it to share, not to be questioned. Mrs. Peter said, it was a cold night 3 years ago. I was sitting in a wheelchair reading Feynman's lectures on physics. Then a man appeared in front of me. He was wearing a wide-brimmed felt hat and a red-patterned scarf. I couldn't see his face clearly. He asked me if I was willing to stand up. Chen Zhao raised his head in surprise and looked at Madame Peter's legs. Madame Peter, your legs, I've been in a wheelchair for 50 years, Mrs. Peter said. I was born with a thigh malformation. No wonder. How could a normal person spend so much time on studying? Perhaps only someone like her, who spent her entire life in a wheelchair, would spend all her time studying. I told him that I was willing. No matter the price, I was willing to stand up. I wanted to stand up. He said that I could stand up, but I had to agree to one of his requests. I couldn't study medicine. If I did, I wouldn't just lose my legs. I would lose even more. A demon contract. But what about this contract? There was no peace in such a request, right? So, you stood up. Yes, I slept for a while. Then my legs became like a normal person's. Mrs. Peter looked at Chen Zhao. That person was like God's messenger. From then on, I believed in God's existence. God's messenger. Chen Zhao looked at Mrs. Peter. Do you have any bad feelings? No, I think I'm fine. Chen Zhao wanted to ask Mrs. Peter to take a look at his legs. But after thinking about it, he felt that the request was a bit too much. Plus, Chen Zhao wasn't sure if the story was true. Even as someone from the supernatural world, this story sounded inconceivable. There were many unreasonable parts. Chen Zhao didn't know if Mrs. Peter hadn't thought through the story when she made it up. Or if it was really God's messenger. To Chen Zhao, this was just an imperfect supernatural or mythical story. So, did you study theology to study this? Do you want to find a reasonable explanation to solve your fate? You can say that. Have you thought about it? What if it's a demon's deal? Child, I know what you're thinking. I study theology, so of course, I've come into contact with demon religions. No matter which religion it is, demons represent transactions, giving and receiving. A scholar once said that the original image of a demon was actually a merchant. Merchants make huge profits through transactions. People seem to be fair in transactions, but in reality, their interests have already been harmed. Mrs. Peter said, but I didn't give anything, so I don't believe it's related to demons. Forbidding you from studying medicine isn't a sacrifice. I think it's a warning and not a transaction. Maybe God saw my future and gave me some kind of warning. Hearing Mrs. Peter's words, Chen Zhao lost interest in continuing the discussion. You couldn't question a believer's faith. She chose to believe in God because God formed her worldview. To argue and question her was not to challenge her God, but to challenge her worldview. She believed that her understanding was the truth. She didn't say it to share. Instead, she wanted some kind of support. Chen Zhao couldn't deny her. No matter what he said, she wouldn't believe it. Plus, Chen Zhao wasn't even sure if Mrs. Peter was telling the truth. Mrs. Peter, it's getting late. I should leave. Chen Zhao stood up and said goodbye to Mrs. Peter. Okay, my child. May God bless you. Although they had different understandings or ideals, Mrs. Peter was still a very amiable person. If you have time, you can come and accompany me. Of course, I'll pay you. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.